renewable corporate utopia.
Hello, and welcome to the Saladcast on Sunday, the 17th of November, 2024. I'm your host, Dan Train. Joining me today, Zachary Burgess.
There, me and my nose.
And Robert Kemp.
And me in my stomach.
I don't know what the fuck's been happening, but like the entire last 2 weeks I've just been sneezing all the goddamn time. It's like some kind of allergen has got into my actual room and I can't escape it.
Maybe it's like just lodged in your nose hair.
Well, yeah, I did think about that as well, but
I'm joining you with a full-blown cold, god damn it. But I think I finally kicked it. It's taken like a whole week. Annoying.
I'm actually pretty cold free at the moment. I've got a little bit of a cough, but that's all I got.
Lucky.
Pretty sure Gnome and I had that there norovirus though earlier in the week.
Oh, here we go.
So that was a fun Tuesday. I seem to remember the phrase was it in Unreal Tournament where you got minigunned and it would describe you as a leaky piece of meat. I think that's apt. I was a leaky piece of meat.
How many toilets have you got available? 3, I guess.
Yes, there are plenty of loos available. More loos than people, is it? Well, or same if you include Miles, who doesn't use them. But yeah, it was a dramatic time.
Did you eat the same thing?
Yeah, but we're not convinced it was. Well, I guess it could have come from the food, right? Our food could have been prepared by shit-covered hands, or however it works.
Poop hands, yeah.
What are we? Oh, okay, yeah, we're good. We're good. We're about 2 minutes into this podcast before I got the first swear in. It's fine.
Is this for YouTube?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's a YouTube thing, isn't it? It got to be in can't swear in the first 60 seconds or something like that.
Is that right? Oh, God.
Well, if you want to get monetized, which, we don't. So we're fine.
Yeah, fuck that.
Yeah, so we both had. Well, Zach didn't come over last weekend, so we Gnome and I were the only ones that had the Asda pizza, and that's the only food we can think of that might have caused us to go bad. But then Noro doesn't have to transmit food or anything. It's pretty contagious, so it's
could have come from anywhere.
Miles didn't get it though, which is
lucky.
Yeah, hugely grateful. Although that didn't stop him from having a vomiting fit Thursday night. It's like I was working from home, sat in this room, and I was just having a phone call at the time. I'm like, I'm gonna have to call you back because something really nasty is happening outside my door.
Okay.
And I just opened the door to my office to find a sea of beige. And it's Marzi was not very well at all. Not Noro. We later found out it was because he had swallowed a coin, and not any old coin, an American dime.
So it was extra poisonous.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it was probably the correct response, right? Right?
Yeah, you don't want to swallow anything American at the moment, do you? Dear me. So did it come out? Which end did it come out?
If it's come out, we haven't found it yet.
Okay. How do you know the dime's missing? I guess
because it's probably the only piece of cash that we kind of know was floating around downstairs, like just out. Do you know what I mean? Because who has cash? Who has cash? I mean, like English money is tucked away somewhere. True. It's somewhere useful.
I don't have any. I think there was one point where I was worried that my the actual cash I had for emergencies was no longer valid because it was like paper at one point. Pre-plastic notes I think I had as backup. I was like, I should probably do something with these before. I think that's well over, right? They're not legit anymore, are they? Like paper.
You know what? I've got no idea, but you're probably right. Yeah, it's probably past legal tender date at this point. We know there's a coin in there. We know it's about the size of a 5p, and we're like, that can probably only be the one thing that was knocking around the living room at some point.
Right, it's no longer present.
because I remember picking it up recently thinking, oh, that looks like 5p. Oh, wait, that's not 5p. What the hell? Marzi probably had the same thought process and said, what the hell? Let's get rid of this.
It's lucky babies are so good at ejecting foreign objects, right?
Yeah. I mean, he didn't eject it, but he ejected a lot of other stuff.
In an attempt.
I mean, you wouldn't have thought that a coin would make you throw up, really.
Yeah.
After it's got all the way in there.
Exactly. It's slightly strange, but I don't know what it is about. Maybe it's something specific to baby anatomy that's just like, oh God, I don't know what that is. Yeah.
But still a 5p. If it had been like a pound coin, then
yeah. So there's that. It's been a fun week.
In terms of the norovirus, would it be easier to have it yourself than have Miles have it? You know, would you prefer to actually just, I'll take that.
That's a really good question, because it would be proper gross. Because at least with one of us getting it, we can run to somewhere clean to have dramatic purges.
Right, he's not got that ability yet.
Yeah, he's not. Marsley, whenever he feels ill, he stands still. Or when he's pooping, he just stands still. You can tell when he's doing. You can tell when it's happening because he just sort of has blank face on.
1,000-yard stare.
Yeah, and in fairness, he was sort of doing that whilst vomiting as well. He was just sort of standing there, not even leaning down towards the floor or anything like that.
Right.
Just perfectly vertical and letting it dribble down. It was pretty horrid, and I'm quite queasy these days at the best of times. I don't know, something about older me is even more susceptible to things that like smells and thoughts. Even sometimes that can just make me feel quite vomitous. So that was not a good combination, because there's me trying to help whilst also going myself.
Yeah.
And also, I've been quite obviously more queasy since having whatever it was we had, if it was noro or food poisoning or whatever. So I'm, even more susceptible at the moment. So it's, happy days. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I'm like, I think if it was Milesy having incredibly liquid volcanic poop that could not be contained. Is it contained? It's not contained.
We've lost containment.
I think that might be much worse for me anyway, because it could happen and be anywhere, right? What if you're sat on the couch and just suddenly browned? It's like, oh, that couch is now ruined forever.
Hopefully, he wouldn't pee on the electrical socket.
He's not a cat.
You never know.
I mean, he might. I've got this vision of him just literally staring down the barrel of a plug socket or something and just vomiting into it, though.
It's like, I know that was meant to be like a scary part of a demonic possession or the projectile vomiting in The Exorcist, but that's just a normal baby thing, isn't it? I don't think that's not demonic, is it? It's just standard. I
guess it's gotta imagine their stomach being squished. like someone's hand is around it and they've just gone, Ugh. It's like that's what happens. It just goes blah.
Delightful.
Yep. Sorry to start the podcast with that, but that's what's been happening.
What's worse than that? Oh, Donald Trump.
The end of the world. The beginning of the end has begun again.
As it has been doing for the last 20 odd years, basically.
Yeah.
Serves us right for talking about politics last episode.
Yeah, it's all our fault.
It's entirely our fault, I think.
Sorry, world. We did it again. He's done it again.
I think this time round I do have a slight element, even though it's disastrous, I do have a slight element of I mean, they may not be perfect. I'm sure they're not. But this is the first time for like 15 years that we've had a government in Britain that I actually voted for.
Oh wow! Okay.
And now we can
obviously.
like look over at them and be like, "Lol, morons."
Except the problem is that we shouldn't really get into politics again. But the problem is that like the first thing that happened immediately was like, "Oh, the special relationship is still good." And it's like, oh, for fuck's sake, can we not do that, please?
Ridiculous.
I mean, is it still a thing? Like,
Well, they have to say it every time.
Do they?
They say it. Yeah, it's annoying.
I mean, would it have been all right if Keir hadn't congratulated him? If he'd have just said nothing?
Well, I
is,
also
is that
think
an acceptable response?
That's not possible.
Yeah,
do that.
that's also another thing that's just dumb, where it's just like everyone has to do it, regardless of even like, you know, Zelensky in Ukraine has to be like, please don't take all your money away from us.
They
Yeah.
have to say it.
Congratulations.
I mean, the thing for us is this, you know, he's mad keen on this tariffs idea, which I'm sure he'll do or whatever. And that would be, this is what I said last time, but like, we'd be much safer against the US tariffs if we were in the EU. Now we're screwed because we left and we've got no protection.
Do we really do much exporting to America, though?
Well, that's
do
the
they
thing
really
is,
like their cheese that only we make?
Well, that was the thing, was like our biggest trading partner is obviously the European Union, right? But we kind of, you know, damaged that. And the idea was, hey, we can do more trade with America to make up for it, or Australia or something. That's not going to work out, is it?
Oh, well, it depends if, like, can you make, or is he planning to do the tariffs from specific places like China? Because he's always had a thing against China, right?
He seems to be on just everything, all imports, which is insane, obviously.
Yeah.
That probably won't actually happen, but you know.
I know you haven't seen Succession, right, Rob? I do recommend it, although it's quite stressful, I guess. But I was reminded of a scene, looking over to them, thinking, there's a bit where, okay, you don't know, so I have to explain the characters, but do you know what Succession is about at all?
I mean, they're closing the name a little bit.
It's literally like the Murdoch's family, and it's like who's going to take over when Murdoch dies,
Sure.
and it's his family, basically. That's the characters, but it's an analog, obviously. And the Murdoch character is played by Brian Cox. But as well as the family, there's like the immediate children. There's like hangers-on. Like there's like Cousin Greg. He's literally called Cousin Greg, who's this kind of lanky kind of chancer guy who's a bit awkward and is trying to hang around or whatever. And then there's also my favorite character is engaged to one of the children. And it's his name's Tom Wamsgans, which is the greatest. But it's Matthew McFadden, you know, from Spooks and.
Oh right, yeah.
He's amazing. And there's a bit where in early on where so one of the children, Kendall, they're at a big party. It's Tom Wamsgans because he's got engaged. It's his bachelor party.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going a bit crazy, right, and doing lots of drugs and all that stuff, or whatever, away from the. But the Kendall Roy, the child, is there, and Cousin Greg has been sort of told by his dad, the Brian Cox, to like look after him and keep an eye on him or whatever. And Kendall thinks this is ridiculous or whatever, so he's doing big lines of cocaine, basically, and he's like, I'm gonna do. He says to the Cousin Greg, "You're spying on me for my dad. I'm gonna do these lines of coke, and my heart's gonna explode. So you better come in here and do some of these lines to stop me from dying or whatever, because you're supposed to look after me." And Cousin Greg, he's like, "Oh, all right." He's not really into drugs or anything, and he does 2 big lines of coke, and then Tom Wamsgans comes in, and he's like, "Oh my god." You're such a coke fiend. I hope you don't die. and then he says, "Buckle up, fucklehead."
Nice.
Anyway, that's what I think. Look at America. Like, oh my god, hope you don't die. Buckle up, fuckleheads.
Just make sure they do all the coke.
They've basically done 2 giant lines of coke, and now so let's see how.
And Mexico will be happy to supply more.
It's true. It's true. It's very true. Anyway, that's what I'm feeling right now. I mean, did you say, but all these insane nominations that are happening. He's not even president yet, and he's nominated people. There's a theory that like the most ridiculous one is like a deliberate, it's like anchoring. Like if you say Matt Gaetz is going to be Attorney General, that's so insane that like it makes the other ones look slightly less bad.
More insane than them getting a Fox newscaster to be the defense secretary.
Defense secretary, exactly.
He was also actually in the military. Don't let that headline totally.
He's a veteran, but I don't know if that. But he wasn't in the military at the time of his appointment, like, which is, I don't know.
A lot of people have been in the military. It's quite a big military. But yeah, that's the theory that, like, obviously.
Well, I don't know if it's necessarily that it's even for these round of appointments. It's like it almost, because if you look at the first term round, it was just like everyone got fired immediately. So it's almost like you get the stupid people in on the first round, fire them all immediately, and then get less bad but still bad but more competent people.
Yeah, how long will it be till that happens? Like
but the first time around, the idea was that he hired relatively competent people because he didn't know what he was doing. And then when they weren't loyal to him, he fired them. But this time around, he's just go straight for the toadies.
Loyal
Don't bother with the competent people.
Yeah, but that's the point. It's the test, right? You got to make it seem like you're only hiring for loyalty, and then that will reveal who all the unloyal people are who are against that.
I mean, they might all turn on him. It's fair.
It's true. Anyway, there you go. Total chaos. Buckle up, fuckleheads. That's what I'm saying.
Does this mean, like, if the tariffs come into effect and they affect, like, as broad a scope as it is, does this mean, like, their video games are going to get more expensive?
Only because of the dollar getting fucked up.
But what if they can't import their PlayStation 5s? Or...
Yeah, it will affect that.
Well, I suppose.
PlayStation 5s, yeah.
The actual hardware.
They're already expensive, right? So,
well, they're Nintendo's. It's like any game made by Nintendo, like, for the most part, is technically Japanese. So
it will affect the Switch too. I think it's inevitable.
I wonder if Nintendo will just do the thing. Here's what I anticipate: it's like they won't bother just putting the price up for America, right? No. They'll do the thing where the price goes up in America and everyone else also goes up because they think they can get away with it.
Yeah, probably.
So expect the Switch 2 to be hella expensive.
God damn.
Apparently, this is a podcast about video games.
Yeah,
this is about video games.
Yeah, it is probably just going to be called Switch 2. Like, that's almost confirmed. But now
it makes a lot of sense because they fucking screwed up Wii U, right? That was a disaster. So Switch 2 is the perfect name. PlayStation, they know what they're doing.
Should have been a Switch Up.
Switch Up.
I call it the Switch Up. The Switcheroo.
Switcheroo.
With a U on the end. Switcheroo.
No, with 2 U's.
2 U's.
No, it should have had 2 eyes. Should have been the Switch.
Switch.
Capitalize on the 2 most, other than the DS, I suppose, the 2 most successful Nintendo products. The Switch. I mean, there were some rumors that, like, it's funny in retrospect now because I remember. I only stumbled upon this week or something where there were rumors of them talking about like what might be in the Switch 2, and they were talking about it's got these like short what do they call it, like high frequency short distance like scanners for something, and it's like, what could that possibly be? And it's like, oh yeah, Alamo came out, right, it would have been for that.
Switch 2. Very sensible. And so what is it? I know, obviously I know this, but I have to think about it a little bit. Xbox 360, Xbox One, Xbox One X.
No, that was technically the Pro, right? One X doesn't really count.
And then Xbox Series S and Series X.
Yes.
Is that right? And that's the full list of Xbox.
That is the lineage, yes.
Okay, cool. But that is not like PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4. PlayStation 5.
Nice.
PlayStation 4 Pro. I mean, that's pretty clear.
MacBook Air. Oh, no, now you've ruined it. Right.
Yeah, I'm not saying the Apple ones are clear. No, they're definitely not. The Air thing is really weird. Like, I still don't know the difference, the current difference between iPad. There's an iPad Air, isn't there?
There is still an iPad Air, yeah.
I don't even know.
I think the Air is like their is actually the higher grade iPad. Weirdly, not the less. Wasn't that the thing with the MacBook where the Air was introduced as it's like, okay, it's not as powerful as a regular MacBook, but it's super thin. So
Well, I always assumed Air was the equivalent of Slim.
yeah. Whereas an iPad Air is actually technically a superior product and is thin and.
But it's not like the standard iPad is like chunky, right? I don't know.
Maybe we can do. Maybe we should do a comparison. I've got both in a drawer in this room currently. Okay. So yes, but no, the iPad Air is a much nicer device.
Because the MacBook Air was introduced as like slim, as in our first MacBook that fits in a Manila envelope. Which I
remember that.
As a British person, I'm like, what the hell is a Manila envelope? Anyway, but it's all got confused. I don't know.
Well, they stopped numbering the iPads. That was the problem, right? they were like, no, we're just going to call it. It wasn't one of them. Didn't they just come out and say this is new iPad? And it's like, oh, okay, now we're bald.
Because once you've done that, you can't go back. That's the thing.
New 3DS Deluxe.
Yeah.
Special edition.
New.
New.
I always think of that new, right, from Scott Pilgrim.
Yeah.
New. Switch 2, perfect name.
Yeah. This came out of like some leaks that supposedly boxes were being handled for the Switch that just had like a giant 2 on them.
Yeah, good.
And for some reason, people are still confirming that it's going to be backwards compatible because that's the most obvious thing ever.
Yes, yeah.
That's like a genuine news story, right?
Yeah, for some reason,
it is.
Yeah, for some reason that blew up, didn't it? The last 2 weeks, and it's like,
I mean, I guess if it's never been actually for real confirmed before, for whatever this confirmation is now, but like if we get at the point where it's like we're getting actual like physical hardware, people looking at it kind of leaks, then maybe that's a real confirmation, but it was going to be backwards compatible.
It's got to happen. Yeah. And, there was nothing to suggest that the technology they were moving to wouldn't be, there's no major shift that suggested otherwise.
It's all pretty exciting. I really hope they have a banger game to go with it. Hard to know what it'll be. Could be Mario. Who knows?
Well, yeah, that's the other theory, right?
Half-Life 3.
That's the other theory, right? That it wasn't announced this holiday season or to be released this holiday season because they didn't have a game ready, right? That's the other theory circulating.
I mean, that's kind of would be fair enough. I mean, I don't know. I kind of think that makes sense to delay the hardware to have the killer software. It's very important.
Yeah, they've got to go hand in hand. Well, at least in Nintendo land, that seems to be more common, right? That they have some killer app to go with the device they launch. They seem to be pretty good at that. Like,
I think that works.
Most other console launches, they just come out with something pretty but simple, right?
Yeah.
A Ridge Racer, for instance.
Yeah.
Ridge Racer.
Because people get it because it's a platform and they know there will be games. But these days, do you know there will be games? I mean, they kind of aren't anymore. So
no, that's true.
I think the killer app thing is going to drive sales. I definitely bought the original Xbox for freaking Halo and
sure,
Jet Set Radio Future, whatever. I wouldn't have. Yeah.
Radio. I bought my Dreamcast for Sonic.
Yeah.
That's not saying much, though.
Killer app.
I had to know.
Yeah, exactly.
Even then.
That's just Rob doing Rob things.
I mean, just look at the texture detail.
You've been watching anything interesting on what's happening before we get to games proper? We've got to have the TV section. You guys been watching anything?
What have I been watching? I've got like the Penguin downloaded. I think it's finished now, so I can now binge it, but I haven't watched it yet. So next time I'll give you my. I'm hoping it's going to be, Sopranos-y, but not. I don't know. I'm hoping it'll be good.
Yeah, I went on a slightly different tack. I ended up watching or started watching BBC's Yeah, okay. Hold yourself back. It's a BBC show. It's not.
Whoa, British TV.
I know. What's that about? Started watching Night Sleeper, which
Right.
was it you, Zach, that saw the ad for that? We were watching, like, started watching Match of the Day once, and we're like, what, as opposed to Day Sleeper?
Yes.
Zach.
Yeah, this is a BBC show about the UK rail network getting hacked and everyone being on a train that's basically out of control.
Unlike usual trains, which are that might as
vaguely
well have
in
been
control?
hacked anyway, judging by how often they get stuck places.
Go wrong. Yeah, it's I think it's getting like increasingly difficult, perhaps, like in the modern age, to like make shows like 24, because this is the reference point I have for this, because
Right.
they've billed it themselves as being a kind of a real time drama, right?
Oh, I see.
So over the 6 episodes of this thing, it's supposed to be roughly real time. Because what else, like, can you really do an action show like 24 in the age of cyber threats and stuff like that? This show says, no, let's make it all about cyber threats, and as a result, make it incredibly stupid.
Nice.
Because, well,
In a good way or a bad way?
okay, every part of me, like, technically is going,
Well, obviously.
it like they get,
How many times are you going to hack the mainframe?
I'll give them some credit. They are often
Mainframe.
yeah, no. They're often close enough with things that it's not so terrible. They're not like enhancing camera feeds to get more resolution, you know. They're not doing any of that stuff. But they're not saying like how many they've broken through our firewalls.
Yeah.
It's like there's nothing like so super stupid like that or anything like that. It's somewhat based on real stuff, but super dumbed down. And I think that's obviously for me, that's kind of where my problem is. Like they've tried to, they have to dumb it down. I get that, and they do a reasonable job here. But you know, every now and then there's something. Someone will say something that makes me cringe so hard. Like one of the security experts. Okay. Mild spoilers. At one point, they hack one of their own to see what they're up to, because naturally, this isn't a show where everyone is competent at their jobs. It's like everyone has to be suspicious of everyone at all times and be constantly like internal struggles, and the UK departments don't work well together, and nobody tells anything. It's basically a show about stupid people.
Okay. Because obviously that's a big appeal of certain shows, is that it's about shows about clever people like doing a good job, like I don't know, like The West Wing or Star Trek: The Next Generation, or even 24 to some extent. Some of the people in CTU are like competent, right?
But barring a few characters who I think are supposed to be, you know, meant to be the hero characters, you kind of feel like everybody else is a dumbass. Like in some way, like they're just acting in a way that is not logical, not helpful, not sensible, just stupid people.
Did they do the trope, my favorite trope from 24 that was made fun of on South Park, the whole "not anymore, you're not" thing, where some other department comes in and takes over, and then some other department comes in and takes over from them?
Kinda. Yeah, sort of, not yes but no. It's like you know, there's a lot of like, why aren't we being told this information about what else is going on, like what the other departments are doing, that kind of stuff. It's like, it'd be very helpful for us to know what you're about to do. You know, that comes up quite a lot. Anyway, there's one moment where they hack someone, and for some reason and it seems like they've clearly got a real time feed of it on screen, and one of the researchers or one of the staff members seems very like antsy about like, we're seeing her type in real time, kind of panic. And I'm like, why would you be at all surprised by that? It's like, this is exactly what you do.
Right.
It's an incredibly stupid show, but it's pretty engaging.
Right.
It's pretty engaging. It's proper train crash TV. Hey.
Eventually.
Kinda, yeah. Yeah, as I haven't finished it. I'm 2/3 of the way through, but Yeah, I can't help myself. It's
I'll never forget that. I just thought of something years way back. We were, for some reason, watching TV, and Zach. I think it was all of us. I think maybe, or maybe it was just me and Zach, and we're watching the start of the Bruce Willis film Unbreakable. Right? The Shyamalan film, which neither of us had ever seen. Bruce Willis is just on a train and he's like packing up. He's talking to people, and Zach's like, "That train's going to derail." I was like, "What?" And it totally did.
nailed it.
Like, how the fuck did you know that?
Sometimes there is.
He's got sixth sense for these things. Like he's watching The Fugitive or whatever. It's like,
I kind of know what you mean, though. Sometimes I think there's a way, like how they set up the shots, right? If they're paying too much attention to like having a very close look at everyone,
or like the shot
sitting
where
down,
they're
I
looking
suppose,
down the train as someone's doing something in the foreground,
right?
And it's like you know there's going to be something that's the chaos is going to flow up that shot as the train gets hit or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like maybe it's Zach that's unbreakable.
My nose evidently isn't, unless that's my one weakness.
Yeah.
Get him in the nose. Anyway, I wouldn't call it a recommendation, but I am enjoying myself with that.
What's it called again?
It's called
Night Sleeper. That's because that's a kind of train, right?
Yes.
A sleeper train.
It's based on a sleeper train coming from Glasgow to London.
Caledonian sleeper.
Yeah.
Which is why it manages to take 6 hours.
Yeah. Right. Amongst other events. Anyway.
That's the TV section.
Done, so.
But maybe not, because moving into news, there's rumours of a Mass Effect TV show, so I hear. Not rumours.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely confirmed. Amazon are currently working on a Mass Effect show.
I mean, that might not see the light of day, but I mean, they made Fallout and people like it. I like it.
Yeah, I mean, we're probably... I didn't get a sense of like when they, from the reports, like when they had started on this. Like, you don't know if they're literally just kicking it off.
Yeah.
But they've clearly got like a team on board and things like that. Because there was you say the writer from Fast 9 is on it.
Yeah.
So, they've obviously scoped up to the point where it's a project. But does that mean they're literally just starting? Is it written? Are they about to go into filming or principal production or any of that stuff? Like, how far away is this thing? Is it entirely off the back of the Fallout success, right? That got well received, and they were like, oh, let's do something else. And so it's that early. My money would be yes, it probably is that early. So probably some way away before we see anything. But I don't know. I like space lens flare. I think I can.
Yeah.
I think I can get behind this.
I mean, the obvious question is like, how are they going to shit up the aliens, right? Like,
yeah, that's my question. Is like,
what's the budget like for the CG?
Because you've got, even if you have the Amazon like Rings of Power budget, which they won't have that level of budget. Like, how do you do for a TV show like Garrus or more?
I mean, like Garrus's face is kind of almost like a animatronic prosthetic anyway.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, that one's fine.
The way it animates in the games. Yeah, but would they make animatronics? Like, is that actually more expensive than trying to CG a face on someone the whole time? I guess I don't know now. It probably isn't that bad once you've got a. They could probably wear mostly prosthetics for the stuff that doesn't move, and then like just have then they only really CG the mouth parts.
Maybe
that might work for Garrus. But what do you do with the Krogans?
Yep, Krogans.
Well, I mean, that is like more like a classic.
Or the Solarians,
the Krogan shape is almost a classic like Jim Henson Muppet style puppet, where it's just like because it extends out in front of the face of the guy wearing the suit.
Yeah,
that's where all the puppetry part goes.
Chewbacca kind of, you can get away with it kind of thing because it's so different. And like Asari, that's fine, right?
Asari's just blue paint. It's fine.
Yeah, yeah, it really is like Garrus, and if you're going to do those characters, but those.
I mean, depends how much like into the other races they go into.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
that's the other problem with this potential. Like, they could potentially just make a Mass Effect game, a Mass Effect show where there are no aliens, and it's just a purely human-focused story if they wanted to.
I mean, they could, but they wouldn't have to.
I think you need Turians. Like, that's quite important, I think. Because the idea of having, because is it in the backstory that, you know, humans encountered Turians and there was a big war right in the past, right? And they're like the Klingons or whatever, sort of, not really, but of Mass Effect, where there was a war and now they're allied.
Sure.
So
I mean,
kind of need that.
I mean, eventually they'd have to deal with the Protheans. That's also because they remind me of a very Farscape-looking alien, right?
But those could be like one-off sequences where you could use the budget or whatever. Whereas if it's like a persistent character.
I mean, I feel like you're assuming that they're going to get that far into the Mass Effect overarching story. Like,
yeah,
I feel like for
this
it could just be like a pure side story thing that's just in the Mass Effect universe that doesn't really link into or has like some like distant links into the game story.
Oh man, I mean, yeah, you might be onto something, because if they tried to do Andromeda, right, where most of the races don't come with them, they get around the problem to a certain degree.
Yeah,
I mean, you don't have to do Andromeda. Like, it's what we said about Andromeda at the time. It's like, why did they do that when you could just have a side story inside the regular Mass Effect galaxy? Sure. You don't have to move to an entire galaxy to avoid that.
Right? Yeah. You don't need to go to another galaxy.
Yeah, I mean, they could do literally anything in the Mass Effect universe, but I think they would follow the main trilogy. I'm with you there. I think they would try and do that. Yeah, it's interesting.
I'm quite positive. I mean, who knows? But I think it has potential there.
What would you prefer they do for them? Would you prefer if they went for like a puppetry and animatronic and actually go for a kind of old school Jim Henson or Star Warsy sort of look, or would you want them to go in on the CG character design?
Probably the former for me, but I
actually don't know. Like,
I still don't feel.
I don't know that it fits Mass Effect to go for the full puppetry route.
Yeah, maybe.
But I still feel this is just. Obviously, I'm not super deep into TV, obviously, because I don't watch any of this shit. But I still feel like on TV budgets, we haven't reached the point where going full CG looks better than puppetry.
I mean, if anyone's got the budget for a big TV show, I mean, on Rings of Power level budget, you could do it, but I don't think they won't have that. But the Fallout budget is decent. You know, they did some good things there.
I mean, it's pretty good, right? Yeah, because isn't the ghoul's face is obviously CG applied to it all the
that
time.
would be what we're thinking. It probably is equivalent to like Fallout, I would say, in terms of
But the ghoul's like the only character that has that, right?
Yeah, but he's a major character, obviously. But you do see him in flashback in looking normal quite a lot. But yeah,
sure. Yeah, and there's definitely plenty of like CG antics going on in Fallout, right? Like not just background and set dressing, like the swamp thing, whatever that's called. You might have to help me out with Fallout creature names, and obviously the power armor.
The power armor is
all of that
good.
had to probably be redone. Yeah, interesting. I mean, I'm up for it.
Yeah,
but yeah, Fem Chef or Man Chef?
Come on, Fem Chef.
What are they called?
Or just not Chef at all, probably.
Maybe.
I'm still not convinced it's going to be on the main storyline.
Sure. I mean, that's fine too. That might be better.
What were the big elephant-looking ones?
Elcors.
Elcor, yeah, that's it.
I mean, that would be where you would be definitely getting into, like, that really would be a hard divide between full CG or full puppetry.
They should just do that Elcor TV show that's in universe or whatever, the one where he's a
special agent. Or is that the Hanar? There's the Hanar version of that as well, isn't there? I think there is one for both, but I don't remember which one is which joke. Or is the joke for the Hanar the porn one, tentacle porn? I don't remember.
Oh,
Remember the Asaris, obviously.
of course.
I think the special agent was Elcor, right? Because they speak in that monotone
Yes.
voice, whereas the Hanar don't speak, do they?
No, they speak in that weird impersonal voice where they never refer to themselves in the first person or whatever.
Yeah, the Hannah always, this one is like this.
Oh,
this
yeah,
one
this
is like
one,
this.
yeah.
Whereas the Elcor are a bit like
They
AK-47, right? It's like chastising, rebuked in. It's like the one line I can remember the Elcor say. It's just chastising, rebuke.
Yeah.
Oh man, it'd be cool to see the Citadel and the Presidium and the walls and everything. That'd be awesome.
Are they Vogons, the short, dumpy guys?
Follows.
That's from Hitchhiker's Guide to the
Oh,
Galaxy.
yeah. Sorry, you're right. Yes, that is Hitchhikers. Yeah. I knew it began with a V. I haven't played those games in a very long time.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's worth getting a
Yeah,
little
I still
hype,
think
given the current upward trend of video game adaptations.
And I think as video game series go, that one has a lot of potential compared to most.
Indeed. So there's that. What else is going on small news at the moment? Because that's all we're getting. Epic have decided to grace us with the original Unreal and Unreal Tournament for free. And they've given it to the Internet Archive, which is damn decent of them.
Nice. Is that in the whole source code or
I don't know about that. Right. I assume it's just actually your ability to play the games for
Oh, that's cool.
For archival and research purposes. But that's cool. That is cool. Anyone? Is there going to be a revival of the original UT?
Well, they tried to remake it. They tried to make a new multiplayer UT. That didn't work.
Well, they made the community UT thing, right? As a sort of Unreal Engine 4
Why didn't that
side
work
project.
Out?
Well, it's because it was weird. It was entirely Epic didn't really make it. It was like entirely driven
community
by
made.
It was. I think it was kind of used as like a testing ground for basically the engine more than anything. Basically, what Fortnite is today, really. You see that there's like pretty competent looking like side games coming out in Fortnite now. Like there's there's an official like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles beat 'em up roguelike available in Fortnite. It's wild. It's the new Roblox, but presumably less crappy than Roblox. Anyway, Ubisoft are finally being sued for the fact that they took the crew not just offline, but unplayably offline. So anyone who owns a copy of it, you can't play that game anymore because it doesn't have an offline mode. This is, according to the plaintiffs, a breach of California consumer protection laws, and that's the grounds they are apparently trying to get Ubisoft on this. But I think they're gonna lose this because I'm pretty sure it's been in the EULAs probably since day one of game software. I don't know, that you're not really buying the software. It's not yours. It's not. It's like you just have a license to use it, and terms of service and all that jazz just means that can be rebuked at any time by the license provider. And sure enough, that's what Ubisoft did. As much as it sucks that the crew is now an unavailable, unplayable game from a game preservation standpoint, legally, I don't know that there's a leg to stand on.
Right.
That's my opinion. I'm not a lawyer. Presumably someone somewhere must have done something to tell these guys, yeah, you could probably sue them for this. You'd hope. But that's my view on this. That's my ill-informed opinion. What else is going on? Not a lot else other than Half-Life Episode 3. I mean, it's not happening, but now we know a little bit about why it didn't happen. Or the timescales by which it didn't happen, more interestingly. So apparently this thing only really got 6 months into its development cycle before it stopped back in the day.
So what do we know? What did we find? What happened?
Well, the sort of feeling was that they were starting to struggle within the Half-Life 2 tool set to make new cool stuff. There's a kind of an opinion that Half-Life is a vehicle for new experiences, right? Things that haven't necessarily been done in gaming before.
Yeah, new ideas, and gravity gun, all that. Yeah.
Sure, and that kind of expands to episode 1, I guess. Was that like was episode 1 the first one to feature the HDR lighting system or something like that? And so maybe that counts. And episode 2 was I didn't actually play episode 2, so you might have to correct me if I'm wrong here, but the kind of open area Strider fight was kind of new, right?
Sort of. But
I mean, new for Half-Life. I don't think it was that innovative.
No.
Video
you not
games.
think? Okay.
It wasn't even that different from, like, in original Half-Life 2 when we were running around in that plaza. I mean, it's just like, now you're fighting them, I guess, rather than just trying to avoid getting shot.
Right.
I feel like episode 2 had more kind of destruction physics, but it wasn't. I don't know. It wasn't.
I mean, there was full building destruction.
Well, yeah,
right?
that was what they used the Striders for, to blow up whole buildings.
Yeah. I guess that was an innovation in Half-Life terms. Like at the start of episode 2, don't you see a huge bridge collapsing with full physics, right? Don't you?
Well, I don't know about full physics, yes, but
I mean,
you're on that train and everything blows up, and
how much of the physics was canned, like or recorded, and
yeah, because it's the same every time. So maybe it was all canned, but you do see that's something you see in the final battle, don't you, with the Striders, is whole buildings being destroyed. So that was kind of cool.
But I don't think that's necessarily even new for that. Like, that was just the Half-Life physics engine. Maybe they
throwing a lot more stuff around.
Yeah, maybe they made it
done.
work for more simultaneous objects, but I wouldn't have said it was like, new tech, really.
There was more scale to it, and I felt like there's more polish to episode 2 even than 1, and then even than Half-Life 2, right?
Well, maybe.
But this feeling that they were struggling to innovate is kind of borne out by now what we know by what they were potentially putting in to Half-Life 3, because I guess as a somewhat of a departure from, the other two felt like they were very much Half-Life 2 with a bit more, right?
Well, that was the point. That's why they were called episodes.
Yeah, but then episode 3, it's like, okay, now we're getting a whole new gun and a whole new mechanic and a whole new set of enemies. Right. Well, I suppose you've got some new enemies in the other episodes, but you know what I mean? It's like the ice gun that they've talked about being as something you can build structures out of, potentially carve pathways with, or construct barricades with in the midst of combat. Fortnite. Basically, they were Fortniting with basically a sort of gooey gun, I guess. Yeah, they were trying something completely new for Half-Life, I suppose, at the time. But they were struggling to make that and other systems feel new enough, really, to justify. So they sort of abandoned it, went on and made Left 4 Dead. The team moved on to Left 4 Dead, which you might argue is an innovative product for the time within the Half-Life toolset.
Sure.
And interestingly enough, and then by the time they finished that, they were kind of like, yeah, a lot of time's passed now. Yeah, maybe we've missed the boat on this. Let's not worry about it. And then they never worried about it again.
I kind of get Gabe's point that like it's not enough just to finish the story. You've got to do something new. But I felt like it seems like they had some nice ideas. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we know it was going to be based on the whole Borealis thing. They were going to do that. It was moving the story, but maybe not enough innovation in terms of gameplay for them at the time. But
I still think that's just a weird, like, hang up on like
It is.
the difference between episode 3 and Half-Life 3. If they'd been making Half-Life 3, then sure, maybe they would have wanted.
Maybe they would have needed a much bigger
Yeah.
bullet point.
Yeah.
But if it's just
But with an
episode 3
episode-
and it's just like finish up this part of the story,
They'd have
then-
gotten away with it. Yeah,
Yeah.
they would have
Yeah,
absolutely got
totally.
away with it.
And he was like, "We could have done it, and it wouldn't have been that hard." And I'm like, "Okay, fine."
It's interesting, like the bit I haven't watched all of that documentary, but I've seen some of that stuff where they were talking about the episodes, and they or seen some of the clips where they've been talking about the episodes, and they were like, "Yeah, it wasn't the episodes were seen well, but they weren't seen as well as the Half-Life." Half-Life 2 as a product on its own.
obviously.
And it's
Yeah.
like, because they're expansions, and it's like,
Yeah.
so did slapping the word episodes on it help us or hinder us? We're not quite sure, but
Right.
Well, I mean, at the time, it was like only really the start of that happening in the broader gaming sphere, really. But like the idea of DLC being an extension of the story in that way was kind of new, even then. But just like it didn't feel like it needed that. It was just like if you're going to make a new game, make a new game. But even if it's in the same engine, just make a whole new game. Don't parse and partition it out into these two little chunks.
sure. And
But I kind of think from what we heard just now, that maybe if they'd just gone straight to doing a whole new game, they never would have done that, and we never would have even got the episodes because
Well,
they
yeah.
would have cancelled Half-Life
Yeah.
3.
Well, that was one of the things they said about, like, when Left 4 Dead had come out. It's like if we want to do Half-Life 3, we're at the point where we probably need to move away from the current tool set and build a new engine, which arguably I don't know that Valve ever really did.
No.
They've just incrementally built on what they've had. Like even today, if you look at what Counter-Strike 2, it's
And Alex, I guess.
yeah, and Alex, it'll be that engine underneath. And Portal and Team Fortress, I guess, like nearer the time.
I mean, but Alex's engine has got like modern features, pretty nice, isn't it? I think.
Sure,
It's
but
weird. It's almost weird that they've upgraded the engine to that extent, and it's only used on this relatively niche VR game.
on that
arguably.
and Desk Job for
Right,
Steam Deck, right? Yeah, it is interesting, and presumably Deadlock, right? Deadlock's coming, and what is Dota 2 powered by? Is that Source Engine?
I think so. I don't know.
So there's probably always, you know what Valve are like. There's probably always someone tinkering on it.
Yeah. It's kind of a weird situation where Microsoft are using Unreal to make Halo, and Valve is still upgrading the Source engine.
Well, everyone's using Unreal now.
Yeah,
I
that's
know.
the problem.
It
That's the
is.
actual problem.
Yeah,
No one else is making engines any longer. And everything is becoming homogenous.
yeah. Unreal have won the engine war currently.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to touch Unity because Unity
Because of- yeah.
and their business practices in recent years. Godot has become quite a popular choice.
I mean, if I was going to make a game, I'd probably look at Godot, but I'm not a pro.
So yeah, there's what did I come across of it? I want to say Game Maker is still about, but as like as like a powerful 2D engine. Like so,
Right.
that's there's plenty of choices out there for people, but
Not like super hardcore choices.
Yeah.
They're all indie choices.
well, yeah, other engines do exist. Obviously, Ubisoft is still working on other proprietary big engines still exist, right? Ubisoft are still pushing Snowdrop. EA are still rocking Frostbite.
Yeah, but for how much longer?
Yeah.
Frostbite feels like it's dying off.
Guerrilla have obviously got their engine, whatever, I forget what that was called, but the one that powers Horizon and Death Stranding. Call of Duty's engine is its own thing, for better or worse.
That Call of Duty's still got that weird Quake look. I don't know why. After all, they've added so many features to the engine, and it's like so high fidelity now, but it still has that look somehow. I don't know how.
They just need to make it not super dark all the damn time. Damn it, black.
Yeah.
That's pretty much the news. I think we could like wrap up the Half-Life talk with a quote here from Gabe Newell. This was the thing he said right at the end of the documentary. It says, I think that Half-Life represents a tool we have and promises made to customers to capitalize on innovation and opportunities to build game experiences that haven't been seen previously. And I think there is no shortage of those opportunities facing us as an industry right now. So is obviously, I guess you want to say that at the end of a documentary about yourself to be like,
we still exist.
Aren't we great? Haven't we got the possibility of continuing to be great?
I mean, that's how he looks at it. I mean, obviously, he called it a tool we have, but he's probably got myriad tools. Like he's probably got like 50 tools to do what he's talking about. Right.
Well, but if you were Valve, like
you don't have to use Half-Life, you can just use one of them.
Maybe, but if you were going to do something to push technology boundaries, that's the one I'm sure they would think of, right?
Well,
in the same way
that's
that
what
Unreal,
they did for Alex, basically.
In the same way that Unreal used to
true.
use that for Unreal until UT3, right? And then the wheels fell off that a little bit.
But what's the next? That's the technology boundary that's going to be like fun to push.
Yeah, I don't
it's like diminishing returns. Haven't we got to a point where you just use the technology that exists to make fun games rather than having to constantly innovate?
Well, it's techniques and physics within. Well, physics was a thing, right? But now, it's what could you come up with that the engines don't already do?
If that's your criteria, I mean, that's the problem, isn't it? That you have to be pushing boundaries every time. Then you get diminishing returns because there are no boundaries to push, and you can't. And then there's no more fun to be had. That's the problem. Surely, at some point, you have to make fun games, that are, aren't pushing things necessarily.
My mind is drawn to the Nintendo patent for link on moving objects, right? And it's like they found a thing that wasn't being done.
Well, kind of, I guess.
Or they believe wasn't being done. Or the patent office believed wasn't being done.
Well, the patent doesn't really count as for anything. Because it was like we said at the time when Tears of the Kingdom first came out, it was like it was a fairly impressive way of doing that, of like having the character you're controlling standing on a completely separate moving thing that you've built, and it just works. And it
not be like a fixed. Oh, we fixed the physics of the world of Link to that object, as opposed to.
It's like it did feel distinct from every other attempt that you'd seen someone do that before. But like that's not that major of a difference between any other engine. It's like if they made a new Havoc Physics that's like Havoc Physics 2 and it's better and it can do more cool physics things. It's like that's not really that noticeable any longer. That's what basically Dan's saying. It's like we've sort of peaked the tech and everything is so incrementally improved that it's just like you can't make a big deal of that any longer.
I'm not saying there can't be new innovations. That's great. Go ahead and make VR games or whatever, but they're going to be increasingly kind of niche.
Yeah.
I mean, there are still places. I mean, you might argue that there are still places where there are strides to be made, right? Fluid dynamics being a big one, right? It's like.
But like in terms of fun, like they did the paint in Portal 2. Obviously, it's not perfect fluid dynamics, but in terms of fun gameplay, they did fun gameplay with fluid dynamics.
It was a decent idea, but you could have implemented it in anything. Didn't have to be the source engine.
Yeah, but it is something that you would have been hard to do on an N64 or something. Like it was kind of an innovation, which was cool. But it's like you could do it presumably with much more realistic, nicer looking fluids. But would it actually be more fun than what they already did?
And the physics of the portals in general, right? In Portal 1, which is why they picked it up.
Yeah.
After, was it called Vernacular Drop?
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah, that's why Valve picked it up in the first place, was because Portal physics and the way those worked were kind of new.
Yeah.
I was trying to think of like what new innovations could there still be at this point? Because the first thing I thought of was like, are we going back to is Valve going to do not just a VR game, but like maybe drop the VR, but bring back motion controls? But then I was like, no. Obviously, the one that would be the modern thing to do would be like some kind of possibly AI involvement in like voice commands, like a game that actually you talk to directly and things happen because of that.
Like what if there was a prototypical version of like the GLaDOS modules or the spheres or whatever they're called?
Personality spheres.
But yeah, like what if there was a your might be a tiny little throwaway experience kind of game, but yeah, what if you're trying to talk to them to deal with that?
Well, I mean,
maybe social interaction is the new frontier.
Well, I was just thinking that, like, it still wouldn't be good enough in the current way tech works, but like the whole idea of that you could just talk to the characters in game and it would actually respond appropriately because the AI could figure out what you were saying and like reconstruct the characters' dialogue out of some kind of options. But
I want to say there's plenty of experiments going on in the MMO space for that.
I wonder if you can make an analogy as a new art form, arguably, with film, because like 100 years ago, there was a lot of innovation. The fact that you could add talking to film, the fact that you could add synchronized sound, and then you could add color, Technicolor, like 70 millimeter widescreen, like so many technology innovations that enabled you, to make bigger, cooler movies, right? It definitely, all those innovations really help the expression like in the art form. But after a while, it's like, these days it's like, oh, we added 48 frames per second in 3D. And it's like, that really helped movies? No, I think it's plateaued in terms of technology.
Sure.
So let's just make good films within the technology,
Yeah. And that's,
which in fairness we're still failing at, but
and
well, some good films.
That is basically the exact same thing as game engines, right? Like,
yeah.
We've basically things in game engines look more or less as good as they're probably ever going to look and have physics as good as it's ever going to be.
I want to say the PS5 Pro has kind of cemented that, right? People's reaction to the PS5 Pro and the comparison footage and being like, sorry, what? Yeah. Like, why do I need this? I don't understand. Like, we've reached that. We're reaching that point where nobody cares, and it's
and there is a thing now. That's definitely true, Rob. And there is a thing now which has been happening for years, but like maybe similarly analogous to movies in that you can make a good-looking indie film, you can even make it with a iPhone, the cameras are good or whatever. Anyway, but you could do that and you could have good acting and everything. It'd be really enjoyable and stuff. But then if you want to make a giant epic Gladiator 2 or whatever, or it's hugely expensive, right? And that is kind of analogous to like something like Grand Theft Auto 6 or Red Dead 2. It's like, it's not about the technology at the ball. It's about the insane amount of effort that has to go in to make something that epic, literally the word epic, right? Compared to an indie game, It's like Red Dead 2 looks better than most games released now, and it came out when? 2018?
Yeah, a while back.
Yeah, and you just can't match that. Like, even though now you could have path tracing and everything and make an individual room look really good, you can't make like the whole world look as good as the amount of effort that they had to put into that game, right?
But we've said it time and time again. A lot of that is art direction over.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
over tech.
It's true.
I mean, we were literally talking, or I literally talked about this just before you went on air. That like, you look at RDR1. Quite a good-looking game, actually. You put it and RDR2 next to each other, and it's not always apparent. That jump in fidelity isn't always apparent because it's got such strong
especially certain
art
things,
directions.
Like the horse models, for example. Obviously, they're more detailed in Red Dead 2, but they're really pretty good in Red Dead 1, the horses.
Absolutely.
They put a lot of effort into making that right.
Yeah, they put the effort in where it counted. And of course, it's Rockstar, so they've got ridiculously huge budgets anyway. So it's probably a bad example, but it was a generational jump between the two games, and yet it doesn't hugely compared to other generational leaps from Xbone back to 360 era. It's like they weren't, those were a bit more impactful than this one. Interestingly.
And now, if we can transition into what you've been playing, I've been playing a bit of Red Dead 2.
Oh, have you?
And it's the same thing as ever. But like, again, the question is it more fun than Red Dead 1? No, maybe not.
No, probably not. I agree with that.
No, but it is great in different ways, and that's the thing. And I thought again of this. I'm sure we talked about this at the time in 2018, but if you compare it to like playing Zelda or something, it's like you're playing this character, Arthur Morgan or whatever, or John Marston or whatever, but especially in Red Dead 2. And like, to me, it sort of feels like you're watching a Western movie, big epic Western movie. And what you're doing playing the game is you're not really playing a character. You're not really playing like I am this character. It's like you are the actor. It's like you are acting in the movie that you are watching. So you basically, especially in the missions that are so on rails or whatever, I mean, you can go anywhere and do anything in the world in theory, right? But it feels like you're playing the part. They call them role-playing games, but in this, it's like you really are like playing the role.
Yeah, here's the role. It's already sort of been defined for you. You're not picking your role. It's like, no, it's like this is the role.
The role, and it's like, how well can you act out the role? And that is enjoyable, but it's totally different. It's not. You'd think it would be the most immersive game ever because it's this beautifully realized world, but it doesn't feel immersive to me like Zelda because Link is a blank slate and you just are Link. Link doesn't have a character. I mean, he's literally called Link because he's supposed to be the link between you and the world, right? And that works so well. It's like there's a sort of disconnect in Red Dead 2 where it's like, and there are loads of games where you play characters, right? Like Mass Effect or whatever you are. But this is the one where it's like when you're in the missions, like doing even the shooting and everything, it's like I'm acting out this part is how I feel rather than I am here. It's weird.
Yeah.
And it's not bad necessarily. Like it's a good game. And like the characters in it, it's really well realized compared to, I mean, in terms of writing, it's like streets ahead of even other Rockstar. Like GTA 5 writing they didn't quite hit the mark, I don't think, especially with the overall story.
I can't. It's one of those ones where I genuinely don't really remember the story now.
Yeah, you just get sucked into that. It starts out quite well with the 3 individual characters or whatever in GTA 5, and they get pulled together, especially when because it's quite well. I like how it cuts to Trevor in the desert after a while, who you didn't even know at first, because at first it's just Franklin and what's his name, Michael.
Yes, yeah.
And then it cuts to Trevor, and then Trevor gets angry and comes and joins them right in the city. But after a while, it starts to get into a mode of you guys are all beholden to these dickheads in law enforcement or something. You do increasingly, stupid missions for these arseholes or whatever to try and I don't know. I don't like that. You're basically errand boys for these dickheads.
But that's
you
kind
become
of
less individual, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But that's also John's role in Red Dead 1. To an extent.
That's true. Yeah, but that that is true. Yeah, it's interesting.
That's the whole story of Red Dead 1. You're beholden to the law.
It works better in Red Dead, I think. Not that has the... Whereas Red Dead 2 is like, I know it's a prequel, so you kind of know where it's heading, but it's quite richly drawn. The problem is it gets really depressing. Like it's almost too...
Yeah, it's a downer story, for sure.
It's a big downer, yeah. But yeah, again, you're playing... I feel like I'm acting in this story, which is fun to watch, but it's not... I don't feel like I have the same kind of feeling of immersion which is weird, given that the world is so detailed and well realized, in comparison to, I don't know. It's weird to compare it to Zelda because obviously Zelda came after all of this, Breath of the Wild, and Tears of the Kingdom. But I don't know. It's obviously the Switch is so much less powerful and can't, the world doesn't have the detail that Red Dead 2 has, but it's so fun. I don't know.
Like I said, it's art direction and knowing what you can achieve within the picking which systems to employ.
And I appreciate that in Red Dead 2, if someone hands you an item, your hand comes out and meets it, and it doesn't clip through anything and picks it up, grasps it, brings it back to you. Every time you pick something off the ground, he bends down, picks it up. in Zelda, you just press a button, it disappears. But that's perfect. I don't need, for that game, it's like it's decided to emphasize different things, and it's just kind of, I don't know, it's more fun, I think.
I think everything you're saying, like, does. I think that is why, like, Red Dead 2, like, despite all the accolades it has and stuff like that and the general critical praise, it's like actually the number of critics that don't like it is quite high.
Yeah,
because I totally see why, if you're going into it wanting to immerse yourself in a thing and just go in, be yourself, do whatever you want to do. It's like it's not really that game. And
it kind of projects like it might be that game, and so that maybe that's the problem. All right, like if it's got an image of like you go anywhere, do anything in this giant Wild West world, which is technically true, but it doesn't feel like that.
It's sort of, I guess, what they wanted to eventually achieve with Red Dead Online, but that
I don't know what happened there.
That didn't get there. Yeah.
Anyway, good game.
Good game.
And I'm playing it on my PS5, and there isn't really it loads fast, right? But there is no like PS5 patch or remaster or anything for it.
But it was well designed because even when it came out, the One X would run it at 4K, right? So
right, yeah.
It had that advantage already built into it. So if you just pushed it onto new consoles, it's like, hey, this runs at 4K native already. Enjoy. So they probably didn't need to do a lot to it. Like, what could they have done? Like, add a 60 FPS mode, I guess, like the PC version for PS5. But that's probably all they would do to it.
Exactly.
But it's Rockstar, they want to wait as long as possible and then possibly charge you for it, I guess.
I guess. I'm sort of curious to go back to Red Dead 1 now it's available, though. It's a bit galling to have to buy it, obviously. But
it's back compat on on Series X,
right?
That's
a great game. I felt like that felt like more in the middle. Red Dead 1. That felt like more like that was me running around in the shooting, getting attacked by cougars or whatever in the middle of nowhere.
Did you ever play Undead Nightmare?
Yeah, I did play Undead Nightmare.
See, I didn't.
I mean, that was obviously weird tonally, but I remember it being fun.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I can see that working in Red Dead 1, but I can't see that working in Red Dead 2 with its systems.
It would not work in Red Dead 2 at all. That is a very good point. Yeah, I think that was part of a trend, Undead Nightmare. There was lots of zombie games in the time, and I remember it being fun. It probably doesn't hold up, I wouldn't have thought, but does the cool.
re-release on PC include Undead Nightmare?
Yes, I believe it does. It doesn't have multiplayer, but it does have Undead Nightmare.
Neat.
Yeah. Anyway, that's what I've been looking at. Should we move on to?
It's an interesting
what you've been playing.
I mean, it's a weird. Like, just as an aside, it's a weird place for them to do it now because, like, Red Dead emulates pretty well in Xenia now. So, like, you're at the point where you can play Red Dead 1 pretty well emulated on PC. And the Series X back compat has always been pretty good because Microsoft did the work to make it run at high res anyway. Yeah. So I guess now all we're getting is 60 FPS, really. With this remaster, and a hefty price tag for what is a not really touched up game. But
yeah, I don't know. It's a bit weird how they don't put any effort into the remasters, but
it is strange. Yeah,
they must be. Imagine the amount of effort they've been pouring into GTA 6 for years. I mean, I literally. What is that even going to be like? Like after Red Dead 2 is already insane, so I have no idea. Like
it's weird, isn't it? Because like if it was any other company, they probably would have put effort into doing some remaster work on their older stuff.
Yeah,
like I don't know, get San Andreas up to modern standards or something, right? To put it against 5 in some way. Like do more work on those older games rather than that terrible trilogy that came out. But they don't need to because GTA Online happened.
Yeah.
And it's like that has put them in such a unique position.
And unlike Valve and Steam, they didn't give them a complete out of getting out of games entirely.
I mean, they probably could have done it if they wanted to just make online forever. They could.
They probably could, yeah. But
yeah.
at some point, GTA 6. Well, I mean, that's the other big question. Like, what happens to GTA Online when GTA 6 comes about? Is it a brand new GTA Online, which means they have to start from scratch again?
They must be thinking very carefully about it because obviously Red Dead Online did not work out. So,
well, obviously they're going to want to start over so they can sell you all the shit again.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
but that stuff is always what like. If you're not very careful,
Blizzard
that's how you
never
lose
managed
your
to-
player base, not gain a new one.
Yeah, but it's such a captive player base anyway. It's like there's no other games that are doing that, like, so there's not really any competition for them to lose players to.
Sure, it is unique, but they might just stick with old GTA Online, I guess, is the other thing. Like,
Sure.
But that's what I'm thinking. Is like Blizzard never replaced World of Warcraft because I'm sure they wanted to, but they just
well,
Yeah.
they were, right? Because that's what Project Titan was,
Titan,
right?
right,
Like, it wasn't a Worldcraft replacement, but it was an MMO, right? And then they poo-pooed that to make Overwatch.
But the
We still
Warcraft,
don't really know why, right? Did they have they ever openly talked about that? Like why they made that call?
maybe a long time ago.
it was like Half-Life Episode 3 where they're like, this isn't good enough, or
Maybe, yeah.
we've just got to can this. Yeah.
World of
But we
Warcraft,
love these character designs.
World of Warcraft had already been like basically remade anyway because they did it by their expansions were substantially
upgrades,
more like changing the entire world rather than just adding a new chunk.
Some of them were,
Some of them,
yeah. They were definitely like big moments, right, where they indelibly changed the world.
Yeah. And, sometimes MMOs do it that way and sometimes they don't. It's like Guild Wars 2 was the weird one where they kind of couldn't decide which one of those they wanted to do. Where, like, they did the living world thing for a while where they were like, oh, we're going to update different chunks of the world as events happen. And then they just went back to regular expansions where it's like, this is just a new chunk of map.
Just a whole new area, yeah. It's risky, isn't it? Because it's like you're then potentially alienating the players that came before, unless you have some kind of like rollback mechanic to
Well,
go
and
back
also
to old
if you-
versions of the world.
Yeah, and also if you've built a whole world where like the whole point was to play through that world from the start, you have to be careful about what you do change. They did sort of succeed with that in some of the living world stuff, where it's just like the world events for that area just became different, but it's still it's all auto leveled anyway in Guild Wars 2, so it doesn't really affect the actual gameplay that much. You're just seeing slightly different things.
Think we'll see a Guild Wars 3?
If they stop making expansions for Guild Wars 2, because they're still making that new one.
They're still making one, yeah.
They have sort of like run out of the world of Guild Wars now. They've recovered the whole thing again.
Wait, you mean they've swept over the entire land again?
Pretty much.
Oh, wow.
I don't remember whether they got to whatever the Nightfall continent was called yet, so maybe they still have one more after this to get to.
Oh, I see. Right.
But they've already done the first expansion from Guild Wars 1, Cantha. They've already done all that. Jade Sea and the White Forest and all that stuff. Then this last expansion is the north half of the jungle from Guild Wars 1, which they never got to, which has all the old like white mantle crap from Guild Wars 1.
Right, yeah, I vaguely remember.
With the whatever weird ancient god they were worshipping or whatever, the Bloodstone, all that malarkey. So yeah. I guess the one thing that they kind of haven't done in Guild Wars 2 is go back to like Ascalon. Like go back super old school Guild Wars 1 zone.
Right. For some reason I thought they had.
They have like half of it in the Charl area, obviously, because the Charls overtook the Ascalon area, but they haven't gone like super far into like the actual human ruins or whatever. Which would be kind of an interesting one to go back to. I guess, because I mean, at the start of the Charm thing, you're like, oh, let's fight all these human ghosts in the ancient human tombs or whatever, because we've disturbed them all because we took over all their land.
Ghosts be pissed, yo.
But I feel like there's, they could go a bit further into that, and there's a lot of that on the sort of east side of the jungle that the terrain isn't super well covered by Guild Wars 2, I guess.
Could you do an MMO at all in today's Or is that market just saturated with WoW and Realm Reborn and?
Yeah, well, kind of. But I'm sure in the Guild Wars model they could, where it's just like it's not like an MMO. It's not a subscription. You just buy it.
Yeah. Is Amazon's MMO still up?
They just
New World, or whatever it was
re-released
called,
that or something, right? They just did a rework. I think they might have tried to
Have
Final Fantasy
they
14
tried to Realm Reborn it already?
Maybe.
But no one's talking about it,
No.
right?
I'm pretty sure I saw something about that. I was confused because I was like, what is New Worlds? I don't remember.
I think that is just the straight MMO.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
It was like, but then it's like New World subtitle something, and I'm like, is that a new game or is that an update to the old one? I'm not even sure.
Black Desert still around? I'm now
Black Desert.
Black
That would be a
Desert.
more interesting game.
I'd play that if it was a cooking MMO.
Yeah.
That could be interesting.
It's all based in the food kingdom.
I mean, now
whatever
there's
that's
a
called.
reason for you to go foraging. I need these bloody strawberries to make
make the
cake.
desserts.
Yeah. But the cake is the real game somehow. Like there's to be some like really intricate and complex game behind the cookery side of it.
We need roguelike cooking.
Yeah.
Randomized ingredients.
You playing anything else, Dan, or is it just that?
That's the main thing, yeah. How about you?
Me or yeah, I'll go. I finished Black Ops 6.
CoD BlOps.
CoD BlOps. Yeah, that game continues to be hella dark. It's like
As in lighting wise.
yeah.
Okay.
And so there was a point where I was just like, this can't be right, and just had a little look around to see if there's any like general consensus on it. And yeah, it seems to be that people just think the game is just too dark if you're playing it with HDR on, to the point where the Reddit advice classically was, yeah, turn HDR off at the console level, because the game doesn't give you the option. You have to do it at the console level. And then apparently it brightens it up and it looks like a COD game. So that seems like a flaw.
Yeah, for sure. That sounds...
I mean, I never at any point thought it was a bad looking game. Really.
No.
But it's just that choice, or their HDR implementation, like something just wasn't working for me, and it just was always a little bit too dim. Even on the very rare occasion you're actually in sunlight in that game, it's it always felt a little too dim, like something was off somehow. So, let me get that out of the way. Anyway, it's a okay campaign. I don't know that I can say that it's elevated itself over previous modern-ish ones. As I've said before, the last campaign I actually really played was Infinite Warfare, like the space one, and I thought that was okay as well. And I don't really see this as much of an improvement. It's weird. It is definitely odd in spots. So I'm about to go full spoiler on your asses, because the story, there isn't really a story. It's like it's typical COD. Like there is a twist you can see a mile off. That's like so obvious that it's painful when it happens, and you're like, yeah, all right, fine. Let's just carry on. Then I hope you've got something else in the bag. And they kind of do, but don't. It's just weird. Like, I think Yahtzee got it right with this. Yahtzee Croakshaw from Smart Goggle Wee Wee from currently working for Second Wind, where he's basically saying like you see the ridiculous list of studios that are involved in this game as the game boots, and it's like, yeah, okay, when you play through the campaign you can kind of feel that like maybe a couple of studios worked on one mission and a couple of studios worked on the next mission, because the whole thing isn't hugely cohesive and seems to basically be the ADHD of games. It's not. It doesn't cohere. It doesn't come together.
I mean, that would be fine if it was built in that way. Because like when you go back to stuff like Battlefield 1, where it's just like individual stories, and it's because they didn't have an overarching campaign. They were just like, here's the tank mission, basically.
Yeah.
It's like, that's a fine thing to do, but you can't then pretend like it's all going to be the same character or whatever.
Yeah. So let me try and summarize the mission structure of this thing, and maybe that will give you a feel for why this is quite a confusing thing. So mission 1 is a very short, probably the most COD-like thing in the game, where it's like it's a set piece. Like, you know, you get in, do
a plane.
not quite. No, it's not quite fight in a plane. You're chasing a convoy. Convoy's already been exploded by an aerial strike. You're fighting through the wreckage and all the guys coming out of it to get to a target. Very quick, in and out, mission done. Possibly the most COD-like thing ever. Initial surprise, blah, done. Mission 2, suddenly, this is the one I talked about last time, and probably my favourite mission in the whole game is the one that's a little bit espionage, or is one of the espionage-y sort of levels, where you're in a sort of, what do you call it, like a benefit gig, almost. I don't know if it's actually in the Capitol building or it's somewhere else, but anyway, it's probably in a mall or something. Anyway, you're at some fancy engagement party, and you're trying to do, you know, you've got plenty of options to do some spy work and stuff like that, and that's kind of fun, doing that stuff, and kind of neat because it's super lenient with the stealth, which is nice. Oh, sorry, no, that's the third mission. I missed the crappy stealth mission before that, which is just bad. I don't like Blood Feud, I think it's called. The second mission, because it's too dark and I can't see what's going on, and I don't.
Yeah.
And so it's very hard to do the stealth right. So yeah, I didn't really enjoy that level.
The goggles like Splinter Cell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you get the espionage mission, which ends actually in an even longer step. You then get an even bigger stealth section underground, with a classic fight your way out sequence at the end. That's kind of cool. So far at this point, I'm thinking pretty good. Then you get the open world level that everyone is talking about, which. Let's call it open world is a little generous, but it's an open area, and you can tackle any of the objectives in any order you want. There's 3 main ones you have to do, but the rest of them are completely optional. Go do what you want. That's okay. I think it kind of outstayed its welcome, was kind of the problem, because all of it was the same. Approach a target. Do they know you're here? No. Great. Kill as many guys as you can before they spot you. Get out. Go away. And it's entirely possible to do some of the objectives and never get seen. Blah, 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 blah. Bit too stealthy for my liking. Call of Duty. Where's the crazy bombastic action I'm craving? Yeah. Oh, that very next mission. Great. This is a simple charge into a place mission, but it's like 2 minutes long. It's really short. Run up to a thing sequence. And then it goes all survival horror.
Really?
Yeah. The mission called Emergence is really strange. You're at that point, you know there's a bioweapon involved.
There's always a bioweapon.
And so you go into this compound that you now know is an old American facility, of course. Twist. Where this thing was developed.
Guys all along.
Like in the 50s or something, because boy, does this thing look like the Federal Bureau of Control. And it's filled with this mysterious gas that makes you think there's zombies everywhere. So let's reuse the zombie assets to shoot some zombies.
Oh, that's fucking stupid.
And have some... I'll give it some credit. There were bits of it that did put me a little bit on edge and felt genuinely quite creepy as like mannequins started only moving when you weren't looking at them, except, you know, when you turn around, you can sort of see the odd hint that they just moved, and you're like, oh God, they're coming for me. And then you start fighting the mannequins. And some of the most interesting boss fights in the whole game, because they just throw the supernatural card at you and go wild with it.
Full-blown Federal Bureau of Control.
Yeah, it's really odd that this exists in this game.
And this is in the same exact world as prior CoD BlOps. It's a whole story. Like, they haven't done Supernatural before, have they?
No.
Black Ops?
Well, they've sort of hinted at it that people like have superhuman adrenaline rushes at times.
Right, like, yeah.
Like I think there's a bad guy you play as in BlOps 2, I want to say, who basically goes on a sort of Hulk-like rage mode.
Right.
And you just charge through a level like that.
The obvious counterpoint or the obvious touch point is like the classic combination of super gritty, realistic military stuff with insane supernatural bullshit is, of course, Metal Gear Solid.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. But I never saw Call of Duty as... That's really hard to do. I mean, I think it helps being Japanese if you're trying to do that. You know what I mean?
I mean, yeah, naturally, it's like their explanation is, of course, it's all in your head, right? Like you're not actually doing these, or well, you're shooting. You can hear your cohorts on the radio going, "There's gunfire, because you're separated from them at the time, but you're on some kind of crazy drug trip, and so you're not actually seeing these things. But then it's in one of the game's weirdest moves, like the game sort of like hints at, you've been exposed to this drug before. You're actually some kind of like one of the success stories of this program. You're
like MK Ultra, is it?
Kind of a super soldier, sort of, but
which explains everything you've done so far because you're actually
one guy taking on like hundreds and hundreds of presumably supposedly well-trained military personnel.
Yeah,
and it's such a left field turn, and all, but that plot point, that thing they sort of adhere to, completely irrelevant. Like, doesn't really have any purpose in the story at all. It's just they wanted to do something weird, and give some sort of get out of jail, I suppose, for why this didn't just kill you.
Interesting.
It's so odd. And then there's a sabotage mission later on that's kind of, it's easy, but it's fun, but it's kind of fun. It's a bit open-ended again. You've got 3 objectives, and it gives you several ways of doing each objective. Although most of the ways are put explosive on thing, but there are.
Isn't that the same with every Call of Duty mission?
Yeah,
blow something up in some way.
Yeah, get to place, put explosive on thing. But it's really an odd thing. Not at all what I was expecting, but not in a good way. I think I was just kind of I was thinking I was more in line for something like a BlOps 1, where it's just like, I just want some good firefights. I just want to work my way through, try and work my way through an environment and be challenged by the combat scenario. Not
maybe you want a non-BlOps.
Maybe I do want a non-BlOps. Maybe I just want to play Modern Warfare and see what that's like. Yeah. But people don't think those, especially the last Modern Warfare entries, like the first remake of Modern Warfare was pretty good, but then the 2 and 3 were cynical because they weren't really supposed to be campaigns in full games. You see what I mean? They were supposed to be expansions, blah. So they kind of mucked that series up. Anyway, it's a strange thing. I like the last level. I think
really?
The last level, I would say, is a mashup of a pretty epic shooting gallery, as it's a sort of Last Stand kind of deal, mashed up with themes lifted directly from Psychonauts.
Okay.
I think Psychonauts 2 specifically, there's a whole section where you're trying to get the shattered pieces of Ford's mind together, and there's a segment that's very much like that.
Wow.
That's playing out in someone's head. What a weird thing.
Other shooters have dream sequences. Max Payne, I guess.
yeah.
Where you're walking along Bloodline. that was pretty bad. Do you remember that?
Yeah, yeah. The sort of platformy challenge sort of sections. I'm not going to say it definitely didn't blow me away or anything like that. I was having a reasonably good time with it, but I'm not 100% sure it's what I was going to. I think a bit of me longs for the more old school CoD. I don't know. I'm kind of wondering if revisiting something like Call of Duty 2 makes sense in the modern era. Does that hold up? Because
what about World War II or whatever. Like, what was?
I
how
never
long
played
ago was
that one. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
not that long ago, right?
yeah. I do wonder what that's like, whether that holds up. Yeah, that was like Xbox One X time. That came out. And I didn't play World at War before that either.
No,
Which was kind of in the middle of the two, right?
Yeah, I don't think that's as well. Is that a Treyarch one? That's ages ago.
Don't know, but I think it was the one that introduced zombies. So
Right, yeah,
as in it had
That makes sense.
it was the first one that had the zombie mode in it.
Did that have some Pacific War stuff in it? I think versus Western Front. European.
Couldn't tell you. So anyway, that's Call of Duty. I have absolutely no interest in going into the zombies mode or the multiplayer, so that's probably where I'll end.
Don't even need to install it.
I mean, what I will say is quality of life with trying to play the Call of Duty campaign is poor because it doesn't support quick resume, so you can't put your console into standby and come back to the game where you left it. It launches from fresh every single time, which means you go to the Call of Duty launcher every single time, which means almost every single time you have to sit through, you have to have it restart itself at least once as it realizes an update has occurred and goes, this update means I need to restart myself immediately.
I was sort of surprised. I don't know why I was surprised, but Red Dead 2, which takes a while to load, even on the PS5, that totally quick resumes.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Most games do.
Yeah.
Even on Xbox, it's like even if they weren't really designed for it, most of them will do it. I think that the Xbox 360, I think is a if you're doing back compat stuff, like really back compat stuff, then that doesn't support quick resume. But so that surprised me. It was just a bit of a shonky experience. I could be in the middle of one of because some of those like stealthy missions can go on a little bit, or if you're in the middle of that open world mission, right? Like there's takes a bit of time. And to come out and then be like, oh, okay, I need to go through the menus. I need to go into the thing. I need to particularly pick the thing. And you can't just really quick burst it because there's no quick resume. It's weird. It just seems like a weird thing for like the biggest game in the world to not have.
Yeah, fair.
I mean,
it makes sense from the multiplayer and the zombies perspective, I guess, because you're not going to quick resume into a multiplayer match. But
what I was about to say is like maybe they weren't thinking about it because they weren't concentrating on that side of it as much.
I mean, the whole thing is weird. Like, I don't like the fact that it has a launcher layer that then launches into Call of Duty, and you can from that launcher layer. In fairness, from that launcher layer, you can get into BlOps 6, you can get into Warzone, you can get into Modern Warfare. One of them, I can't remember. So they're clearly trying to make this hub app without making it a separate app. So everything is just through Call of Duty, as it's called. But I don't know. I just don't understand why. Why would you do that? Like it's a bit weird. Maybe that's what Assassin's Creed Infinity is actually going to end up being.
Well, I mean, why did they do it for Halo? It was kind of so that they could have all the stat tracking in one place, I guess, because Halo was about that, I suppose.
Oh, why Master Chief Collection was made as a collection?
Yeah.
As opposed, because they wanted it to be one thing. Like, as in the release be one thing rather than release everything. That's slightly different, but because you bought the collection, right? Do you see what I mean? You bought that. Until they made ODST.
Yeah, until they made the extra stuff.
Yeah. But you can't buy ODST on its own, right? You need the collection and then expand to ODST.
Oh, yeah. But that's why it's a launcher, basically.
Kind of, yeah.
If they ever put Halo 5 into it, then...
But, which they won't, as far as their current plans are, or Infinity for that matter. I don't think they'll ever put those into Master Chief Collection. That doesn't... Well, I'll never say never, I guess, but, MCC2.
Yeah.
Not a very good name, is it? Master Chief Collection, if it's got Reach in it, but it doesn't have Halo.
Does it have Reach in it?
Does it have
Yes.
Oh, yeah, they did eventually add Reach. Yeah, you're right.
But that was why, presumably, it was called that originally because it didn't have reach in it, right?
It didn't have reach in it, and it didn't have ODST in it originally. So
Right. And they put all the non-Master Chief games in it, but they don't put the new Master Chief games in it.
Master Chief is totally in reach, technically.
I mean, right at the very end, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, there we go. So there's that. What else did I play? I don't know if I'm trying to remember what I mentioned. Like I finished a couple of runs on Splatoon Side Order.
Well, you finished some more. You're getting good at it now.
Yeah, the runs are definitely getting easier. I don't think I'm at the point where I'm not really discovering anything particularly new and interesting though. I've had a couple of good runs where my spec ended out good.
Well, I mean, I guess that's why you're succeeding more, because you've found all the different possible ways it can go. Then you know what to aim for.
Sure.
Easier.
Yeah. I might go back and try the dually. I still haven't completed a run with your starting weapon set, so maybe now I go back and try that again. But also because it's a bit roguelitey, right? You are earning a currency to make the runs easier,
right?
But they have smartly made it so you can turn that stuff off if you want to give yourself a challenge again. You can undo your previous purchases. You don't get the currency back, but you just the things you buy end up being like a sliding scale that you can be like, oh, you can step it back down, but you've unlocked the the easier state. And you can get this thing called like risky runs, basically, where it's like you only get the rewards if you complete the run. So if you fail out, you don't get anything. If you really want a challenge, I suppose, or you really want to try and get progressing a bit quicker. So yeah, I still find that thing kind of addictive once you start a run, but I'm finding the draw is now decreasing because now I've finished a couple of runs. But there's plenty of stuff I haven't done, right? There's plenty of I need to, this locker wall. There's so many more keys I need to get for it to see what's in here. And it's like, are there any surprises still to come? My money's on no. There's not going to be any real surprises left, but you never really know. So maybe I'll do a bit more of that. Steam Deck, I've not been doing a lot over there. I mentioned last time I was playing some F-Zero GX. Yeah, I'm still tinkering with that every now and then. Nothing really new to say on that. It's an excellent game. One of the best games ever made. I did start playing Cook Serve Delicious as something just to be like, I need a quick burst of something. That's a very old game. Or very
right, yeah.
There's not a lot to it. It's kind of one of those. How do you even describe? There must be a genre for the sort of game where basically it is just about a little bit of hand gymnastics is really what's going on. So that the whole flow of the game is like, okay, you make a menu of the foods you want to serve to customers, and then the customers come in, their order appears on the board, and then you say, okay, if you've got multiple things going on, you choose which one to do, and you go, right, I'm going to do this one, and that means, I need to prepare this pizza. Okay, so I need to put the toppings on this pizza, and in order to put the toppings on the pizza, every topping has its own button combination. So a big list appears on screen, and a text box appears with what the customer is asking for, and you have to do the mental gymnastics to connect the two. It's like, right, I need to push the cheese button, then the tomato button, or other way around, whatever, and then I need to push these directions to get these toppings on, and then when you're happy with the order, you chuck it to get cooked, and then that goes off into a queue, and then you wait for that cook to be finished, and when it's finished, you can then serve it to the customer. Blah 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 blah. That's just pizza as an example. There are other foods where you do the prep like a baked potato, where you cook the potato first, right, and you wait for that to finish, and then when that's done, then you do toppings on it, and so the sequence of events is different. If people order fish, you've got to cut up the fish first, so that requires a whole different set of button presses. There are chores to do during the day that have a button sequence you have to do. So it's all about just very quickly and accurately doing the button presses that you have to do. Because once you've added like an ingredient to a customer's food, you can't undo it. So that customer's now going to be unhappy and you've lost your perfect combo. So it's, but you've still got to go through the effort of serving the food if you want any money from that customer, so it's, And it just becomes that's the game, right? It's just like, do this for a while, juggle all these things and get them done quickly, and make sure you're picking the right one to do before the timer on it expires. Otherwise, you'll drop your combo or get negative buzz, so you'll get fewer customers coming through the door or something like that. And that's the whole thing. And it's kind of fun for what it is. It's very basic. It's you could just chuck it on, do whatever. I find it slightly more compelling to play on the Steam Deck itself than use my cinema suite to play such a game. Do you know what I mean? It's
right, yeah.
It somehow feels way more at home on the handheld. But my problems with it are that it has quite a high what's the way? Like it requires you to do a lot of grinding. So, like, in order to get my restaurant to 1-star level, I've got to do 20 runs, and a whole bunch of other things, a whole bunch of other like objectives. I finished all those objectives within like 2 or 3 runs. Like it didn't 3 or maybe 4, maybe 5 runs or something like that. And now I've got 15 runs. I kind of just need to grind through in order to just get to 1-star level and then unlock basically the next phase of progression in the game. And also, like, the amount of money you're making from a day's service is nothing compared to how much things cost to buy. Like, if you want to add extra foods to your menu, for instance, they could be on average, let's say at the moment they're around the $1,000 mark to add a food to my potential repertoire, ignoring the fact that some foods you need to buy equipment in order to be able to prepare those, and they can be like 500 to thousands of dollars to buy, so you're equipped to actually make those foods. And I'm making about $300 to $400 a day. It's so it takes a number of days in order to be able to actually just to buy something new in order to like perhaps make this a little bit interesting, or perhaps or progress a little bit. The progression is slow, is what I'm trying to say. It feels a bit grindy and a bit, either I'm missing something or it's just not tuned particularly well. So, which feels like a shame, because the game clearly has more up its sleeve, but I can't get to that yet.
Yeah. Okay. Just trying to access that.
Yeah, I think it takes too long. It takes too long to get where you want it to be. Maybe that'll become less of a problem, or maybe that'll become more of a problem. I don't know. Maybe getting from 1 to a 2-star restaurant requires more than 20 runs, and it's like the game will just slow down even more. I don't know. It feels like a problem in what is otherwise a quite serviceable little thing. Also, I don't know why, but there's music in it that sounds an awful lot like the Cantina, the Star Wars Cantina theme. So.
What do you mean you don't know why?
Well, okay, yeah, but like it's one of those sort of like knockoff that is like it's pretty much the same tune.
Gotta have a bit of jizz.
Bit of jizz, yeah. So there's that. And the other thing I bought, but didn't mean to start, but I kind of had to start it because I bought it and I needed to check it was okay. And I don't know if Zach has noticed it in this room just yet. Yeah. He probably did. But I bought a copy of Starlink Battle for Atlas for the Nintendo Switch. Can Dan remember what that even is?
No, what the heck is that?
So, back when Toys to Life was still a kind of a thing, right? Or the back end of it anyway, like Skylanders was kind of winding down. I think Disney Infinity was still about, and Lego Dimensions might have still been about.
I mainly remember Skylanders because Jeff Gerstmann was into it for some reason.
Everyone loved Robot. So Ubisoft wanted to have a go at it, but they wanted to have a go at it in the space shooter genre. So they came out with a line of spaceships that you would attach to a controller, and they would appear in the game as the ship you were flying. But those ships could also be augmented by adding weapons to them. And actually, it turns out they're a bit more flexible than I originally thought, because you can take the wings off these spaceships and put them on other spaceships to make other weird contraptions. And all of that would be translated into stats for your ship in the game and how it would look in the game. Ooh. Actually, and pilots that you would put in the ship and stuff like that. It's kind of neat.
How is it all detected with like QR or something?
Well, actually, just straight up, like, not NFC or anything like that. There is, like, so I've bought the Switch version for one very specific reason, that you can play as frickin' Star Fox.
Star Fox. Do you get an R-Wing then, a physical R-Wing?
I am holding one in my hand.
Nice. Can you take the wings off and attach different wings?
You can, in fact, take the wings off, and but I haven't got any other wings to attach. So, but you can see how they work. They've got these, like, the weapon slots are basically like, they're basically little cartridge slots. They look like old, like, like how the bits of PCB used to stick out at the bottom of like Mega Drive carts or whatever.
Yeah.
And they're basically those, and they just slot into the port. So there's presumably the whole thing talk together, and then they sit in this special holder in which you attach your Joy-Cons to. And that forms the physical controller.
So presumably it is still using the NFT. It's just transmitting the NFT down from the model to like where it contacts the actual Joy-Con.
The NFC is going through this thing. I guess that's building what the NFC code is in the model,
the parts,
and then that gets sent to the controller somehow. Yeah,
or the whole thing's Bluetooth somehow, but probably not.
So I don't actually know, because I haven't used it like this. Because one of the other things Starlink lets you do is just play the game entirely digitally if you want.
I should hope so, in terms of making it a success.
Well, it's a bit unusual in the toys to life genre. Like, Ubisoft wanted their cake and eat it too. Like, they made all these things, but they also gave you the ability to just download it all as DLC if you wanted. Problem with that is those prices are still extremely high.
What's because they prefer you to buy the physical thing?
Well, yeah, which might actually be cheaper on the second-hand market, just getting more toys. But I don't want more toys. It's like, I just wanted the bloody R-Wing, because it's an R-Wing. Come on. But yeah, I looked into like potentially getting like what the deluxe upgrade is, so you get everything, and it's like still like 50 quid. And it's like, nope, for a little experiment, I'm going to see how much joy I can get out of just the base kit and see what happens. Turns out Starlink's an interesting game. Like, kind of more so than I was expecting. It is hampered by the Toys to Life design, but maybe I should come back to that, because, yeah, it's interesting. Out on its base settings, it feels like a kid's game, because it has extremely generous aim assist. And I would describe the controls as not really what you would expect from a space shooter. Like, if you've been around the genre since the 90s, like we have, you sort of expect ships to fly with, I'm going to have to set my throttle, I'm going to fly in a specific direction, I'm going to basically have to drive this thing around in 3 dimensions in order to have a proper dogfight, right? Like, they fly, like, in a way. No, the controls for this are more hover tank-like. So you push forward to go forward, you push back to go back, but then you strafe with left and right on the left stick, and you turn with the right stick. It's basically like almost like first-person shooter controls, and that's true whether you're in space or on planet surfaces. Because I think the majority of this game is actually going to take place on planet surfaces, and you're actually going to be flying the ships like hover tanks. Where maybe this control scheme makes a whole bunch more sense. But yeah, definitely dial down that aim assist, because it is incredibly strong on the default setting. But it does at least give you full control to lower it really quite. You can turn it off completely if you want, and I'm tempted to do that. I've got it on low at the moment, but I might turn it off completely to add, some of the dogfightiness back into the game. But it doesn't give you that doesn't give you that little lead marker, so I'm not sure you have to lead. I think if you just shoot at the thing directly, the shots will hit, that kind of stuff. So it's a little bit different, but I think that's where this is going to perhaps fall apart, is that it hasn't necessarily shown any depth to me yet. Like, it almost feels like the depth comes from having all the things. Like, when you come into an encounter, against something you haven't fought before, it says, this is the recommended weapons against this enemy, and it's
right. Okay.
well, I don't have those.
Right.
Like, or I have one of the 3 you've suggested. So my kit comes with 2 bolt-on weapons. Well, 3 bolt-on weapons technically. You get 1 digitally, and you get a flamethrower and an ice missile launcher, and so the obvious combo is you thermal shock things by freezing them first, and then firing the close range flamethrower at them, and then they take a thermal shock bonus, and take extra damage. And so far that seems to work against pretty much everything. But at least in the R-Wings case, you can take the weapons off and get the Star Fox weaponry, which is cool. You can get your green lasers back, and the homing laser comes back, and it's like, that's neat. I like that you gave me that option. But yeah, I wonder if that's where problems are going to start coming in with this game, because there's no room for a progression, right? I'm not going to be able to unlock ships as I play. I'm not going to be able to unlock weaponry as I play, because it wants me to buy them.
Yeah, you have to physically have them. Yeah. Well, you don't have to, but you have to buy them.
Yeah. The only form of progression I really have is there is a leveling system. There's a mastery system of what pilot you're using with what ship. And as that pilot masters that ship, you gain a level there, and you can then put that into your pilot's experience, essentially. So some of their abilities can increase. But that's about as deep as a progression as I'm going to get out of this, which is probably going to feel a little shallow after a while. But that's the nature of what you're working with. I think that's the downside of a Toys to Life model. It's like, you've got to make it work, right? You've got to make whatever you've provided be available at all times.
Yeah. It's still cool, kind of cool.
Which is, yeah, it's a shame, because I actually think the game is quite well made. Yes, this is the Switch version, so it's like they did do an Xbox and a PS4, an Xbox One and a PS4 version of this as well, which are clearly going to run and look nicer. But it doesn't run that bad on the Switch. It's, it's got some of the telltale signs of, like, they've cut this back. Like, some of the model detail isn't great. Some of the texture detail isn't great. It looks like a better looking game scaled back, if you know what I mean. That kind of, like, this is a potato version of what could be of a better game or a better looking game. But it's fine. It's perfectly serviceable. The story hasn't really kicked off too much yet, but it's quite well presented so far. And it's got to be said that they basically just integrate the Star Fox characters into the story on the Nintendo version right from the start. As in, they give a sort of loose reason why they're there, but they make sure every character they're not just there as a side thing to the story. They are kind of involved. And it's like, that's neat. Like, they went to the extra effort of putting doing this collaboration with Nintendo make a little more sense. It's like they're a little bit, sure, the Star Fox crew are a bit fish out of water in the whole situation. And they're like, what's going on here, guys? We don't know. All right, well, maybe it benefits us to help you out. Like, because Star Fox are on a mission, they're tracking Wolf into the Atlas system. That they don't know anything about, so they're on their own mission, but get tangled up in this other thing, and as a result, they get all the Starlink goodies, like being able to swap their ship parts around and stuff like that. They inherit all this technology off their new friends. And there's a Star Fox DLC pack that's a tenner that I'm mildly tempted, because it expands that further and lets you play as all the other Star Fox pilots. And gain their abilities and stuff like that. And it's like, oh man, is this the best Star Fox game since Star Fox 64? It might be. It might well be.
That's kind of sad, but
yeah, it is. But also, like, man, if Ubisoft wanted to go back to this, I know I'm early into it, but like at the moment, I'm feeling like if Ubisoft wanted back into this and make a Starlink game, but perhaps drop the whole Toys to Life thing. Or maybe just get them to make a Star Fox game. Maybe that's a choice. Maybe there's an option there. I mean, they made Mario plus Rabbids somehow. Maybe just let them make Star Fox. Just saying. I want a Star Fox game.
Yeah, we all just want a Starbucks. It's a shame that like Miyamoto kind of slightly ruined it.
Drop the ball on Zero a little bit. Yeah.
He can focus on his theme parks. Oh, actually, that's news. Did you see that? There was a Miyamoto tour of the Donkey Kong addition to the
Oh no, I didn't see that.
theme park. Yeah, I mean, it's just a Donkey Kong themed extra area for the theme park. I even find that weird that like they're so meticulously planned that like the exact same park is opened in multiple places in the world, right? So like there's a Super Mario World theme park, obviously in Tokyo or wherever that one is.
Yeah,
and then there's an identical one now in
Universal Studios,
California or wherever it is. Oh no, in Florida or wherever. Yeah, Universal Studios. And the same thing will happen with this. They must have reserved the exact same area where they've connected in Tokyo, the Donkey Kong area,
Right,
in Florida to be able to build that. It's so weird. Well, I find it weird. Maybe that's perfectly normal in theme parks, but I find it really strange.
Yeah. I mean, if they have, in a weird way, maybe it's easier to do it this way this time round because Tokyo, they're going to be limited in space, right? So
Presumably.
and if getting that space is going to be easier for their plot in America.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Anyway, but that was quite fun because it is Miyamoto doing the tour, so it's like 5 minutes. So I'd like look that up. It's quite cool. There's plenty of bananas.
Anyway, I'll stop talking because we're already running very long.
Oh man, Zach,
And we haven't
what
even
have you
done
been
Zach.
playing?
Yeah.
Well, I played mainly a bunch of Factorio, but like I don't feel like I've made much progress because I've been having like really sort of a thing that's sort of related to decision paralysis, except it's more like planning paralysis.
Okay.
Because I have like a base on all 3 of the inner planets and the starting planet, which means I now have access to all of the like special buildings related to each of those planets. So at that point, I was like, okay, so now I can basically make rebuild all my bases again with all this new tech into probably their final form. Now that I have access to it, I mean, technically, the last 4th planet that's further out has special buildings as well, but they don't seem like as much like things that you're going to use to replace old tech as much. There is one that's sort of like that, but it's not as important, it doesn't seem. So I was like, this is the time to rebuild all 4 of these bases, basically, on each of the planets into their probably final form. But then
It's not even my final form.
But then because everything is so interconnected, I'm trying to like think about what I even need to do for each of these. Like, because there's also, you get the new special buildings related to each of the planets, but those buildings can also only be made on those planets. So you have to be able to have a like base on that planet that gets all the components necessary to make that building, and then you ship that building to the other planets. So you have to plan for that. And if you need to use any of the resources that are specific to one of the planets on one of the other planets, you then have to think about that as well. So basically all of the planets are going to have like rocket launching sites that load up the rockets and then fire them up to the platforms. But then on each of the different planets, the way you make the rocket parts is different.
Right.
So they all have their own different.
Is that because of the resources available?
Yeah, because of what resources you have. Like obviously on the ruined planet, it's like you just recycle a bunch of shit and you basically get the rocket parts for free, and that's quite easy. And then on the lava planet, it's like you're sucking up the lava and then turning it into metals and then making stuff sort of in a normal-ish kind of way. But yeah, so I was thinking about all that, and it's just like, well, I want to start with my main home base because currently that's the one that is also sort of my supply base where it makes all the parts, basically. It makes all the buildings, apart from obviously the ones that can't be made on that planet. So I was like, well, I want to do this one first. But then that one is probably also the most complicated, obviously, because it's still the original Factorio planet, where it's like you've got all the individual resources and you're having to ship them all in. So the kind of natural way to do that is use trains, but then how do you want to do it with trains? Do you want to have like, do you want to still have all your trains unload onto like a bunch of belts and then spread off from that? Or do you want to build like individual factories where it's like only a couple of train stops to bring in specific resources and then do one thing and then ship that back out? So that's kind of what I did in the end, kind of a midway between that, where I have like some smaller specific factories, but still one main thing that's going to make all the stuff and be the rocket launching site to ship all that stuff out. And also, you because each of the planets has their limit that has that like specific building thing where some of the buildings can only be made on that planet. The starter planet also kind of has that because the starter planet is the only one that can have the labs built on it. So you still have to ship all these science packs from the other planets to the home planet to be able to feed them into the labs to do the research. So that's like, you kind of have to build the labs there. So then I was like, how am I going to do that? And there's also a weird limit of, you can have as many rocket launch silos as you want, as many as you can make the parts for, but then you can only have one landing pad. So all the deliveries coming to a planet has to go through this one building, but anything going from the planet, you can launch from wherever. So then I was like, okay, so I have to plan out for this. I have to have my rocket landing pad, because that's where all the science packs from the other planets are going to be coming from. You'll probably want the labs next to it, but then because you also want to bring in other resources from other planets, you're going to want probably a train station to put them onto the train network, and you're probably going to want it next to where you're making all the other buildings.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, basically it was a whole lot of like, I have to think about so many different like interconnected stuff. It's taking me a really long time to plan this out. And then also because the other classic problem is like, I'm having to disassemble a base that I'm like currently using. Like this is the base that makes all the parts for me to be able to build new stuff. So I can't like disassemble that yet because I kind of need those. But I did eventually figure out a way around that. But yeah, with all the new tech, it's way more efficient in some ways. Like I think the biggest one is probably the planet that I went to last for some reason, was the volcano planet. The volcanic planet is sort of like, the game sort of implies that that's almost the one you're meant to go to first in some ways, mainly because it has like, it's really easy to get power there because like solar,
because of the volcano.
well, solar power is also very effective because it's nearer to the sun, but then the power source you can get from the volcanic heat is also like super easy as well. So even after you've gone past the power output of the solar panels, it's much easier to just extend that. But then with the tech you get from the volcanic planet, which on the volcanic planet you're sucking up the lava and running it through the foundries and turning it into metal. But there's also a recipe that does that, but just from regular ore. Like you take the regular ore and put it in the foundry and turn it into molten metal as well. So you can use that on the home planet version, where you're still mining regular ores, but then running them through the foundry. And the trick with like the special buildings that you get on each of the planets, their main trick to being why you want to use those instead of the like default versions is that they just give you like a 50% productivity bonus by default.
Oh.
So they just make extra resources every cycle, basically. You get an extra 50% for free. As well as the actual recipes being more efficient as well. But then the other thing that makes the foundries from the volcano planet also kind of more useful on the home planet is that they're putting out molten metal, and weirdly enough, putting molten metal on trains in liquid tankers is more efficient than turning it into plates and then shipping those around. Like you can fit more theoretical plates in the form of molten metal in a tanker car than you can physical plates in a freight car.
I mean, I guess that makes
sense. Yeah, it does kind of make sense, apart from the bit where you're shipping molten metal around at like 1500 degrees or whatever.
Using the verb shipping there. Sorry, I thought you were using shitting to mean moving around.
Well,
shit these around.
Yeah, you definitely can shit them.
Shit those all over the place.
And there is also like the secondary advantage of using the molten metal is that like, because you're putting it in pipes instead of on belts, that actually makes the like logistics of it easier. Because, well, especially now that they updated,
shit flows through pipes better than
it does
belts, right?
better than on belts. Because since they updated the way the fluid physics works, you don't have to. They basically really simplified the fluid physics. Like you don't have to worry about how the flow works any longer. Basically, anything that's connected to a pipe just instantly receives fluids now. So there's no concept of like, well, there is some concept of flow rate, but it's not like the flow takes time to travel through the pipes. It's more like a limit to how much you can pull out of the pipes. So there's no There's no limits to it in the way of like it used to in Factorio. And also the other thing that they fixed with that simplification is that in old Factorio there used to be a lot of problems with that system where it was like they had weird glitches where the order you built pipes in affected how it flowed through the pipes at like junctions and stuff. Because obviously it had to be a deterministic system, but then how do you determine what order the pipe, when a chunk of fluid comes to a pipe intersection, how do you decide whether it flows left or right? But now they don't. It's just the pipe is basically your whole pipe system is basically one singular pipe segment now, essentially. It doesn't even care about how far away things are, except there's this. They had to introduce a weird arbitrary limit where it's just like if your pipe is more than 350 segments long, then it mysteriously just stops working.
Oh, okay.
And you just have to slap a pump on it to separate it into a new segment.
So basically a teleportation
yes,
machine.
It is basically, yeah. So there's that. But yeah, I've been having this struggle to get going on this massive rebuild, but I'm sort of most of the way through it now. I'm just at the point where I just have to disassemble my supply base and rebuild it with all the new resources attached. And I finally got research going again. And then I just have to go to these 3 other planets and rebuild all their shit. Which hopefully shouldn't take as long because that's what those things are much more specific. That you only need to make the science pack for that planet and whatever their special building is, rather than making everything on the home planet, basically. So there's that. That's Factorio. And then the other thing I've been playing is Mario and Luigi, because that came out.
Brothership.
Yep. So because,
I always remember, what was it? Is that the first?
Yes, that's the first
Luigi?
game.
Yeah.
battle music is not as good in this game, I don't think. Not even as good as Dream Team's, I don't think.
What's the first game? Superstar
Saga.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I did remember that. Okay.
But yeah, I've been playing that to see if it...
Is this the sequel to Superstar Saga then?
Well, I mean, they're all sequels to each other, kind of.
Did they reference their adventures in the past, or are they?
Yes.
Okay.
They do. Except in a kind of dumb way. Like... So you're in a completely different world. It's not like the Bean Kingdom, which is adjacent to the Mushroom Kingdom. You're like, you go for a weird portal and shit, and you're in a completely different world or whatever. And yet, somehow, there's
the
all
one
this...
in the Flower Kingdom is like you can see the Mushroom Kingdom from it, right?
Exactly.
London.
It's just an adjacent kingdom, literally.
Yeah.
Whereas
this
it
is like a total dimension.
Yeah, you're in a totally different dimension, and yet somehow, not only are there like you're sailing these seas, obviously, Brothership, but there's like there's these mysterious reefs around the place that are shaped like odd things, which just coincidentally look like references to the other games for no apparent reason.
Oh.
But then also, like, characters keep turning up. Like, I mean, obviously, at the start of the game, in the first intro sequence, you see, like, obviously Peach gets sucked up by the mysterious portal, and so does Bowser, so he's going to turn up at some point.
Sure.
But then, like, one of the characters from one of the early-ish Mario and Luigi games, I don't remember which one, because I think it was one that I didn't play. It might be the second one, possibly. But, like, one of the helper characters from that game shows up randomly. And it's just like, why are you here? You weren't in that intro sequence. But yeah, that's the...
I've been here for years, mate. That's why you haven't seen me.
That's the mysterious level of references they're going with, where it's just like, it's not very well explained, but who cares really, I guess. And also just like the item that gives you permanent stat boosts is still beans. Because it's just like, that's just a Mario Luigi thing, even though that's just because the first game was in the Bean Kingdom and they were beans then.
So have the beans from those previous games always come from the Bean Kingdom, and now we're coming like, oh, this is where this stuff comes from.
Except it's a completely different universe, mysteriously.
But what do beans means?
Yeah, they means stat upgrades.
Beans means stats.
But yeah, apart from that, it's sort of not quite a Mario Luigi game, which is maybe what people are having a problem with it for some reason, apart from some people are saying that it's like, it doesn't run good or whatever.
Yeah, performance is a bit flawed.
But
then that's anything Unreal Engine powered on the Switch.
Well, yes, there is that, obviously. The Unreal Engine struggles. But I haven't really seen much in terms of problems with performance, although, as we always say, I'm not as sensitive to like frame rate and shit as other people are.
But it's not really a game that necessarily requires it
Well,
either. No.
But then the thing that is more noticeable is just like load times, particularly going in and out of battles. It's just like, this is just slightly too long.
It seems mildly unforgivable for a game of this type. Like, I can see why that would be irksome, right?
Yes. But then that's like the engine level of that. But then, of course, it's just like, it's also just a kind of slow game anyway, because I don't think they needed to do this, but they made it so that even your most basic attacks are like a combo attack with the two brothers. So you're pushing like 3 different buttons, even on your most basic attack, to do this whole 3 hit sequence. And so like that slows everything down a bit more than it needed to, I think.
Right, you can't just mash A for a fight if it's an easy fight.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, yeah. Even on the first game, it was still just like you had your one. It was only one button push. Well, select and then the hit push.
Right. Yeah.
But now it's like select and then 3 more buttons to do the 3 individual steps. I mean, you can intentionally fail them, but then you just do less damage.
Yeah.
So yeah, that slows it down a bit more. Although it's weird because like that. Every attack being that sequence slows it down more, but actually, if you do mash through the menus, those go past pretty quick. Like there isn't like a physical delay to menuing. It's just that there's this whole sequence.
So it doesn't have the classic Nintendo wait for animation or text to write.
Yeah, you can just mash through those parts pretty quick. But yeah, that's the sort of problem with it being slow. And then, some people have complained about tutorials, but I don't think they're that bad. It's Nintendo. It's like, you're already expecting it to have bloody awful, terrible, halting tutorials all the time.
Yeah, you're expecting it to be a bit handholdy.
But it's not that bad, even for a Nintendo game, I don't think. And then the other problem, which is a more specific problem to, like, how Mario and Luigi works, and I have, like, 2 separate parts to this problem as well, is that like it not quite living up to the old like style of Mario and Luigi, because they've sort of not understood how that's meant to work, I guess. So the first version of this problem, which is a much more minor problem, and I think is like maybe sort of smelling of corporate involvement problem, is that when you're doing the battle menu in the old games, the whole point of the Mario and Luigi games is like Mario's on A and Luigi's on B, and that's still the case in like the Overworld. You can still make Luigi jump with B or whatever, and that's kind of how that has always worked. But now when you're in the battle menu, they got rid of Luigi's menu being B, so you still have to use A to select Luigi's menu stuff. But then when he goes into his attack combo, he's still on B.
Right. Yeah.
And if you have any muscle memory for Mario and Luigi, that's going to trip you up regularly.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's a really minor thing. And also, the reason why I say that feels like a corporate problem now that is like internal Nintendo Studio or whatever, is like, I would bet that there's like an internal design document for Switch developers, which is like, A has to be confirmed and B has to be cancelled, and it can never be anything else.
No matter what you're doing. Yeah.
Which is like, that's a problem that, I mean, that must have been like a super early discussion in this thing, right? Because they know how the old games work.
Yeah.
It wasn't just like, this is a mistake. They must have talked it over at some point. But yeah, if you have the muscle memory, that will completely screw you up. Even like once you think you've got used to it, sometimes you'll just do it wrong still. And it's like, oh, yep, that's still there. It's mainly because if the muscle memory is like you remember of it being, you push the button to select the thing, and then you're using that same button in the attack, the immediate attack afterwards. But now you're like pressing A, but then if it's Luigi, you're immediately pushing B for the start of his attack. So yeah, that's annoying. But then the other fundamental thing that they've kind of messed up with the Mario Luigi concept is like Luigi is more like an AI character now. Like, in the old games, he basically stands directly behind you on essentially the square behind you, even though they weren't exactly tile-based. But, like, he was there behind you. So when you were jumping over a gap, it was like you'd push A, B, and you'd be like, jump, and then you'd jump over the gap like that.
Right, yeah.
But now he just jumps automatically. So even though you can push B to make him jump, you don't actually need to at all in the platforming. He just follows you. as you run
They've
around.
simplified.
But then that also extends to how they've also made him a more independent character as well, where if there's an object in the environment that you can interact with, you can also just basically push L to have Luigi do it. So he can automatically do certain things like break boxes or pull up turnips and stuff.
Okay.
Which is in some ways kind of nice, because you can just he can help you do things quicker by both of you doing it at the same time. But it does kind of he's not directly behind you any longer. It's not like the Mario Luigi formula. And then the other way they've extended that, which is sort of cool, but weird in its own way, is now Luigi is the brains of the operation, apparently.
Wait, what?
This what they call Luigi logic, where he just randomly comes up with stupid ideas.
Nice. That's great.
Okay, that's kind of funny, but also not at all like his character portrayal in anything else.
Well, sort of. I mean, versus Mario, I guess, who's does he have any ideas ever, apart from kill things?
Not verbally. Not that we ever hear them, I suppose.
Apart from murder.
Yeah. But yeah, so as you're exploring the world, quite often it will be what do we need to do with this thing? Oh, Luigi will figure it out. And he has a pointless little zoom in sequence where it's let's look at Luigi thinking, and then he gets an exclamation mark, but it's in the shape of an L, obviously, because it's a Luigi idea.
Is that perhaps what may have been construed as some of the tutorialization stuff? As in they're there's a puzzle here, but Luigi's going to figure it out for you, so don't worry.
Kind of, except even then it's still sometimes... Well, I think maybe there's also an element of bad leading of the player, because one of the earliest occurrences of this is you're on you find these weird seesaw things where it's well, obviously you're going to jump on one end and the thing at the other end is going to fly off, right? So you put Luigi on one end, you put Mario on the other, and you jump and something's meant to happen. Except that only works in one specific case where you're jumping down off a ledge onto the seesaw and then Luigi is on the other end, and it works as you would expect. But in the other direction, when you rotate the seesaw thing, you send Luigi to stand on one end, and if you go jump on the other end, it's you don't have enough height to make him ping off it. But that's not what you're meant to do. You're just meant to use Luigi standing on the other end to make it be flat, and then you just jump off the thing onto the higher ledge, because it's not high enough that you can't just jump.
Right.
And it doesn't really show you that very well. It took me a long time to figure that out. It's I can just jump, I can just reach that ledge. I don't need to use the weird physics of the springboard or anything.
This thing's here, but I don't need it. Well,
you do need it to be level, but you don't need the extra...
The boinginess.
Yeah, the extra physics of it. That was kind of weird. But then the other place that you get Luigi logic is in the boss fights, where it's they have dumb
Sorry, that's made me laugh every time you've said Luigi logic. I don't know why.
They have these
logic,
they have these dumb little extra sequences where it's basically Luigi has this plan, and then you do this fancy sequence, and then basically you just get some free critical hits on the boss afterwards if you succeed in the quick time event, basically. But yeah, it makes those fights a little more fancy, I suppose. And maybe this is also sort of a throwback to the Dream Team style of Luigi being the important part of that game as well in the Dream World, doing the Luigi things.
Yeah, because he was the one that fell asleep.
Yes, and then you go into his mind, basically. But yeah, apart from that, I mean, it's still more or less a Mario and Luigi-esque game. It still tries to sort of be funny in that way that those games were, in that very specific way. But you can still feel it, and you can feel it in that, and in the way the game generally is made kind of simple, is as we expected, where it's it's obviously Nintendo taking this internal, and then this is the new team's first attempt at it.
Either the first attempt, or Nintendo have wanted to, I don't want to say focus group it, but do you know what I mean? Just soften its edges a little bit, for whatever that means.
Yes.
And
it does feel like that. Is that although, I mean, it's still not completely simple. Stuff will still hurt you a lot. You do still have to do the counters, and the timing on them can be kind of tight. And it's also, sometimes I feel it is actually almost too quick in terms of you don't have enough time to perceive what the enemy attack even is the first time.
Right, okay.
But that's sort of fine because, you know, you just take a bit of damage and then you learn.
You learn it, yeah.
It maybe is actually good that way, that you can't just immediately counter everything the first time you see it.
Sure, yeah. I mean, that's sometimes annoying in a game like Elden Ring, I bet, but like, I couldn't even see that attack.
Yeah. But now I've just got to the point, well, I've got slightly further than the point where you get the battle plugs, which are just like, it's basically kind of like the other Mario games where they have badges, where they're like, you know, upgrades that you can attach to give you specific bonuses. But in this game, it's they're expendable, except they recharge. So it's like you get 20 turns or whatever of using this thing, and then it has to go on to reset into recharge mode, and then you can put something else into that slot.
Oh, neat. Okay, so you don't have to leave them there to recharge whilst equipped.
No, they just immediately unequip, and then you can just refill the slot. And you can
kind of neat.
You can feel that you can change them out in battle, and it doesn't take a turn to do that in battle.
Oh, you can just do it.
Yeah, you can just go into that menu and just swap them around.
That's kind of cool because that then encourages you to use them.
Yes. So it's a kind of nice way of having those stat bonuses be more interesting. Of like, if you want
put them on cooldowns.
If you want the anti-air, you can switch to the anti-air one if you're fighting aerial enemies, and then. But what if you find what if you find a stronger aerial enemy later, and you've already expended all its uses or whatever?
It's like, oh no, well, I'm screwed. Now I'm gonna have to deal with it.
Deal with it. Yes. So yeah, it's probably a perfectly fine game.
Perfectly fine.
It's probably not a 5 like IGN said, because they're insane.
I'm going to have to watch that review. That sounds mental.
I mean, like,
IGN.
I can see how you would get to that conclusion if you were like a super hardcore Mario Luigi fan and you were only looking at this game through the lens of only comparing it to other Mario Luigi games. I mean, look, I can see how you can get to a 5 in that way.
Of those.
I mean, we shouldn't be too critical of reviews because reviewers are how the reviewer felt. And so perhaps there is something about his experience or her experience, whoever played the game, that is particularly awful that led to this. But still.
It's like I can see how
it really looks like an outlier.
I can see how you can get to a 5, but also you're then also reviewing for IGN, so that should just be a 7.
Everything's a 7.
Yep, minimum 7. And also the
scale goes from 7 to 10, right?
Yeah, and also because this is a game about sailing the seas, the old joke has come back for IGN. 7.8, too much water.
What was that from?
I don't remember what game that review was for. But too much
Skull
water.
And Bones?
No, it's way older than that.
Sea of Thieves?
I don't know, probably older than that even. But yes, that's a classic IGN meme of bad reviews.
Too much water.
Too much water.
Electrics?
It's probably newer than that.
Wasn't it the puddles in Spider-Man or something was the thing? What was
that? What was the thing about that? They just got rid of them?
They got downgraded,
Yeah.
right? Because there's some of the early footage about the puddles made them look really shiny and nice and reflective compared to what they ended up being. They weren't quite as high quality in the finished product.
There was also another game at that same time where like it was Witcher 3 where they were talking about how the bushes got worse.
Oh, right.
They downgraded the foliage.
Yeah. That's got to be made for performance. It's going to happen. It's not a big deal. The Spider-Man one really wasn't a big deal. No. Like I don't know why that was so much of a thing.
Well, and then they got a meme. That's why.
Yeah, and then everything got ray traced anyway. So everyone's happy.
Yep. So yeah, I'm getting through Mario and Luigi sort of gradually. I don't know how long it actually is. I think I've already put in like 14 hours.
Nice.
So it's not insubstantial, I suppose.
I wouldn't expect it to. I expect it to be quite meaty.
And it has like side quests and shit, except they're like, these side quests can expire. And it's like, well, I mean, as if we aren't all going to go and do the side quests immediately that they appear anyway. But but now you have this extra layer of like, if it's red, go and do it immediately, because otherwise it might go away if you advance the story anymore.
Okay, that's what you meant. Like, so they are like point in time point in story progression specific.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, I guess it's nice that it tells you
warns
that,
you,
but who isn't going to immediately do every side quest as soon as they appear?
Yeah, now you know. Like, just don't do them. Yeah.
And it can still be that Mario and Luigi slight weirdness, apart from the Luigi logic, which is definitely in the vein of the Mario and Luigi weirdness. I just had a sequence where you have to break into this island that has like a fortification wall around it, so you have to build a rocket to fire at it and blow a hole in it, and it's like, that's fine. But then once you build the rocket, they're like, well, we don't really have very good guidance for this rocket, so it might miss if we just fire it at the wall, so what are we going to do about that? And then this group of 4 children you've been hanging around with that have been kind of helping you on these other missions are like, we'll ride the rocket to our doom, apparently, in order to guide it onto the target correctly.
Kamikaze.
Yeah, and like they don't. No one seems to have much of a problem with that. Some they do slightly point it out.
Well, it's Luigi logic.
If only. That would have been better if it was him. But yeah, then you have this whole sequence where they dramatically fly the thing into the wall, and it does like the thing where it like does dramatic close-ups on their faces, where it looks like they have accepted their fate essentially as they're flying this rocket into the wall. And then it blows up, and then of course they're all just totally fine, and they're just lying on the ground on the other side of the wall. And it's just like, what was this trying to imply exactly? It definitely seemed like it was trying to imply they were all going to die, but it's like it's a Mario game, so you know they're not going to, but then it looked like it was trying to say that. It was very strange.
So weird.
But yeah, that's that game that I've been playing somewhat. In between Factorio sessions. And the music isn't
the
as
games
good.
for today?
I think that might be the games.
Yep, I think that is it.
I got one minor shout out
the
because
games for today.
I teased Zach with this, but I need to show you this more than talk about it, I think. I played this arcade game emulated on the Steam Deck called Radical Bikers X. And it's a sort of how do I even describe it? It's basically like a very simplistic A to B arcade game, like ride a bike from here to here, except it's not what you think. You think Radical Bikers, a bit of me thinks like, yeah, it's going to be like a super biking game. There's going to be some like heavy metal or something like that. No, you're a pizza delivery guy on a moped, and it has a theme tune that is just choice. It is like it's got this punk
choice theme tune.
Choice is a sort of punk rock song with lyrics about being the pizza man. It's a thing. I'm gonna have to show Zach at some point. It's pretty
okay.
It's pretty entertaining. The game itself is meh, but like the background song is quite funny. Like, for an arcade game to have it what sounds like an ad lib of someone basically sounding a little bit like, I don't know, the sort of Trey Parker and Matt Stone style "fuck yeah" in the background is kind of funny. It's like, this was an arcade game, guys. Anyway, that's me done.
And I think that's a podcast. You're gonna have to show that to Zach now. That looks amazing. Sounds amazing.
It's a weird thing.
Thanks for joining us for all this chat about games and other stuff. We have game videos as well on our YouTube channel, which you can check out.
Videos?
I finally managed to get Satisfactory Part 3 uploaded after way too long.
So our schedule is now satisfactory, I would say. So check them out there, and we'll be back here with another one of these rambles in a couple of weeks, so we'll catch you then. See ya!
We out!
We out!